Chapter 17:17. After successfully wiping out the three angel teams, Chuanjin could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, Chuanjin's team was one of the best in the game, be it in terms of strength or equipment. If it was a normal team, they probably would not even be able to deal with these few angels. Wang Yu also understood why Hermit wanted him to bring a few more people to help. These monsters were not very strong, but if it was just Wang Yu alone, it would not be that easy to deal with these few monsters. These were just small monsters, and they were already so difficult to deal with. One could only imagine how difficult the later bosses would be. Fortunately, everyone had already grasped the method to kill these angels, so it was much easier to kill the later angels. After clearing out wave after wave, it did not take much effort for Wang Yu and Xuanjin's team to pass through the garden and arrive in front of a gate. The gate was tightly shut, and there was a cross-shaped lock hanging on it. The lock emitted a white light. Wang Yu prided himself on being righteous, humble, and refined. He was naturally not good at picking locks, and opening the gate depended on the assassin. Dao Xue, go! When everyone saw the lock on the gate, they immediately thought of Ming Jian Dao Xue. It could not be helped, this kind of technical work was not something that violent maniacs could handle. Ming Jian Dao Xue was also a pitiful person. Xuanjin's team was fiercer than the last. There was no need to talk about Wang Yu. Any one of them could take charge of an area. Only Ming Jian Dao Xue, a logistics member, was slightly weaker. When the server first opened, it was still fine. With the equipment advantage of being a player with money, Ming Jian Dao Xue could be quite useful in a dungeon together. However, now that everyone's equipment had increased, the gap suddenly widened. Usually, under the halo of Xuanjin's team, Ming Jian Dao Xue's presence became less and less. Even when he was clearing dungeons, he was basically slacking off. Apart from unlocking locks and setting up traps, Ming Jian Dao Xue did not have much use and became a true door-opening thief. It was not easy for famous sword Dao Xue to finally be of use. Naturally, he straightened his back, his face filled with pride and elation. Hee, you still have to rely on me at the crucial moment. Famous sword Dao Xue proudly praised himself for a while before striding to the door with a disregard for his own family. He casually took out a small stick from his pocket and stabbed it into the lock. The people of Chuanjin also stood behind Ming Jian Dao Xue, waiting expectantly for him to open the door. However, after fiddling with it for a long time, Ming Jian Dao Xue's expression, which had been one of absolute confidence, gradually froze, turning into a solemn one. Seeing Ming Jian Dao Xue's expression, the hearts of the people from Chuanjin started to hang in suspense. Dao Xue, you trash, can you do it or not? Ming Du had the best personal relationship with Ming Jian Dao Xue. At this moment, when he saw Ming Jian Dao Xue dilly-dallying, he could not help but mock him. Ming Du was also a blind guy. Famous sword Dao Xue's only ability had now lost its effect, and he was currently feeling anxious. Wasn't he just asking for a scolding by insulting him now? Agitated by Ming Du, Ming Jian Dao Xue was immediately enraged. He glared at Ming Du and said angrily, "If you can do it, then go ahead. If you can't, don't complain." The people of Xuanjin had never been at a disadvantage when quarreling with their own people. After being rebuked by Ming Jian Dao Xue, Ming Du retorted sarcastically, "If I can do it, why would I need you? Isn't that all you can do in the team?" As expected, the mockery of this **ch Ming Du did not discriminate between friend and foe. When these words came out, Ming Jian Dao Xue's face instantly darkened. Cough, cough. Seeing Ming Jian Dao Xue's expression, Wu Ji hurriedly coughed and changed the topic. That's fine. After all, this is the Protoss backyard. It's normal for the mortal world's lock-picking skills to not be able to open it. Old you, go ahead and give it a try. As he said this, Wu Ji turned his head and glanced at Bai Ming Yuyu. Bai Ming Yuyu looked at the dagger in her hand. Without raising her head, she coldly said, "I only know how to kill. I don't know how to unlock." What a poser. The speaker may not have meant it, but the listener may have meant it. Wu Ji had taken over the conversation entirely to give Ming Jian Dao Xue a way out of this embarrassing situation. Unfortunately, When Mingji and Daoshua heard these words, it sounded like mockery. I can't even trust a professional lockpick, and you want to find an amateur to try? What does that mean? Are you looking down on me? Mingji and Daoshua fiercely glared at Wuji, then turned and left. What's wrong with Daoshua today? Looking at Mingji and Daoshua's departing figure, Wang Yu had a dumbfounded look on his face. Mingji and Daoshua was, after all, an unaffiliated person. Normally, he had a very good temper. The people of Chuanjin also had cheap mouths, and they usually joked with each other a little too much. He had never seen Mingji and Daoshua react like this. Sigh. Wuji thought for a moment, then sighed. Maybe Mingdu hit a sore spot. Hearing this, Wang Yu seemed to understand what was going on. Indeed, with famous sword Daoshua's personality, no matter how vicious Wuji's words were, he would not fall out with Wuji. Clearly, famous sword Daoshua's reaction was due to Mingdu's provocation. Thinking about it, it made sense. They were all companions who had come all this way. Up until now, all of them were experts, but the gap between him and the rest was becoming more and more obvious. Mingji and Daoshua definitely did not feel good. After all, this was different from how Wang Yu had left the people of Chuanjin in the dust. Compared to Wang Yu, the people of Chuanjin were inferior to everyone else. Even if they were treated as foils, they could still be considered brothers in the same boat. No one would laugh at the other, and as time passed, they had gotten used to having such a thigh to lean on. However, Mingji and Daoshua was the only one who had been left in the dust. This was a very strange feeling. Even though the members of the Quanjin sect would normally not look down on him as a friend, Mingji and Daoshua still felt a little strange in his heart. Now that Mingdu had pointed this out, one could imagine how Mingji and Daoshua felt. Thinking of this, everyone immediately pointed at Mingdu, revealing angry gazes that mourned for his misfortune. At this moment, Mingdu also realized that he had been too talkative, but he did not want to admit it due to his pride. Now that everyone was pointing at him, Mingdu shuddered and quickly took the opportunity to say, "Everyone, I was wrong. Daoshua hasn't refunded his capital yet. I'll go get him now." After saying that, Mingdu hurriedly chased after Mingji and Daoshua. I didn't expect Daoshua to be so sensitive. I've been careless. Wuji shook his head in self-reproach. He walked to the door, grabbed the cross-shaped lock, and examined it closely. Bei Ming Yu did not know how to pick locks, and the only person who knew how, Mingji and Daoshua, had run away in anger because of Mingdu. They could not just stand there and do nothing. Perhaps they could find a way out by studying the lock. After examining the cross-shaped lock in his hand for a moment, Wuji revealed a puzzled expression. Chapter 17-18. Rebirth was a game with swords and magic as its background. Everything in it was retro. Even if the magic civilization was highly developed, high-end items like fingerprint locks wouldn't appear. Thieves' lockpicking skills were also at the stage of using tools to poke the keyhole. Mingji and Daoshua's lockpicking skills were already at the master level. As long as the lock had a keyhole, he could even use his hair to poke it open. But this thing didn't have a keyhole at all. How was Mingji and Daoshua supposed to open it? No wonder Mingji and Daoshua had such a depressed expression when he saw this lock. Of course, since the game designer had designed this mission and setting, this lock could definitely be opened. There had to be a mistake somewhere. Where did it go wrong? Wuji was at a loss, because he didn't have any clues about this lock at all. Seeing that Wuji was also at a loss, Wang Yu came over to give his opinion. Could there be some kind of magic gear on it? Gear? Wuji shook his head. Mingji and Daoshua is also a master in the art of gears. How could he not see if there's a gear? Wang Yu rubbed his chin and thought for a moment before punching the lock. Since he couldn't solve it with technical skills, he could only try brute force. Bam! In the end, when Wang Yu's fist landed, there was a low, muffled sound. This cross-shaped lock didn't even budge, let alone break. Obviously, this lock was invincible. What the hell? Seeing this scene, the Chuanjin people felt a headache coming on. What the hell was this? Not only did picking the lock not work, but even brute force couldn't break it. What kind of brain circuits did the game designer have to design such a stupid lock? Help! Just as everyone was helpless against this lock, a familiar shout suddenly came from afar. Everyone hurriedly looked over and saw Mingjian Daoxue running for his life towards the Chuanjian people. Behind Mingjian Daoxue were 7 or 8 green monsters. The monsters weren't very big, only about 1 meter tall, and they were about the same size as goblins. However, they were as beautiful as elves, and what was terrifying was that these green monsters were all holding boulders that were as big as millstones. They were chasing after Mingjian Daoxue, throwing boulders as they chased after him. The rock, which was the size of a magic disc, smashed into the trees on the side of the road. Even the thick trees were snapped in half. The Chuanjian people's hair stood on end as they watched. This little monster was too ruthless. Wang Yu cast a detect spell, and the attributes of those little monsters appeared before everyone's eyes. Garden Elf, LV 50, Special, Elf, HP, 5000 MP, 500 Skill, Stone Throwing. Talent, Gardener. Damn it, these attributes are trash. Famous Sword Snow was truly useless. He was a level 60 plus great thief, yet he was being chased around and beaten up by these mobs. As Mingjian Daoxue got closer, everyone could even hear the mobs insulting him. Despicable thief, filthy trash, useless coward. Mingjian Daoxue was so unlucky. Not only was he being mocked by Mingdu, but he was also being attacked by these monsters. How should he put it? This was something that would make men fall silent and women cry. Even though the garden elves were holding boulders and running faster than Mingjian Daoxue, the assassin, those millstone-sized boulders almost hit Mingjian Daoxue a few times. Quick, go help him. Seeing that Mingjian Daoxue was about to be crushed to death, Wang Yu leaped over. Seeing this, Wuji and the others followed closely behind. However, before they could reach Mingjian Daoxue suddenly appeared on the side of the road with a flash. In his place was the black-robed Mingdu, who had caught up. After replacing Mingjian Daoxue on the side of the road, Mingdu flashed again and appeared beside Mingjian Daoxue. At the same time, he slashed his staff on the ground. Boom! A wall of earth broke through the ground, blocking the garden elf's path. The garden elf's path was forcefully blocked. Without saying a word, they raised their boulders and started smashing the wall. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The boulders smashed into Mingdu's earth wall. At this moment, the ground beneath the garden elves' feet turned red. A wave of flames rose, and all the elves were instantly engulfed by the flames. After burning the elves, Mingdu could not help but turn around and scold Mingjian Daoxue again. You noob! How can such weak mobs chase after you? What do you know? Run! Mingjian Daoxue rolled his eyes at Mingdu, then pulled Mingdu and ran toward the other Quanjin members. Mingdu said with a blank expression, the elves are all dead. What are you afraid of? Halfway through Mingdu's words, he heard a wave of insults coming from the flames. Ugly trash, disgusting black crows. F***CK. Hearing the insults, Mingdu's eyeballs almost popped out. Even the other members of Quanjun were extremely shocked. Mingdu was the #1 damage dealer in Rebirth. The vermilion bird staff in his hand was also one of the 10 great divine weapons. If he released this fire, let alone the garden elves with only 5,000 HP, even if they had 50,000 HP, they would be instantly killed. But these little guys still had the strength to scold people. This was too King strange. Could it be that when he set fire, there would be smoke and no damage? Fire-type magic was ineffective. Before everyone could react, Mingjian Daoxue explained, these elves cannot be attacked. F***CK. Hearing Mingjian Daoxue's explanation, everyone broke down again. F***CK. This F***King Garden really had all kinds of F***King monsters. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just when everyone was dissatisfied with this setting, these crazy garden elves had already smashed through Mingdu's mud wall. With a few sound of the air being pierced, 3 to 4 millstone-sized rocks flew toward the Quanjin members. Lower your heads. Get down. Seeing this, Wang Yu and Wuji immediately reminded the others. In a panic, everyone hurriedly crawled to the ground. Huge millstone-sized rocks flew over everyone's heads and smashed into the fence behind them. Bang! 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 The huge rocks thrown by the garden elves caused the gate to shake and clang. Boom! Under the attack of the garden elves, the gate that left Wang Yu and the Quan Jin members helpless crumbled to the ground, creating a cloud of dust. Aya, I'm in trouble. Time to run. Seeing that the gate had been smashed, the garden elves shuddered. They pointed at the Quan Jin members and scolded. You despicable invaders! How dare you destroy the sacred gate of the Garden of Eden? You will be punished by God. As they scolded, the terrifying garden elves scattered like birds and beasts. Chapter 17:19. What the F***CK was going on? These bastards were too much. They were the ones who smashed the door. How could they push the responsibility away? The door was broken? At this moment, the Chuanjin crowd suddenly realized that the door that they had been helpless against had been smashed. The Chuanjin crowd was stunned once again. After a long while, they cursed from the bottom of their hearts, F***CK. Mother F***Ker, this F***King video game designer is still as deceitful as ever. A F***King shiny lock, but in the end, it's just a decoration. The real way to open the door is to smash it into pieces. Alright, as expected, everything in the game had its uses. The lock that couldn't be opened and didn't even have a keyhole wasn't opened by the players. It was mainly to attract the attention of the players. With such a huge door erected there, normal people wouldn't think of opening the door when they saw the lock. Wang Yu, Wu Ji, and the rest were also attracted by the lock. That was why they fell for the game designer's trick. It was all thanks to famous Sword Daoxue that they attracted these bastards. Otherwise, they would still be studying the lock that couldn't be opened. Damn it, this group of shameless game designers really made people speechless when they acted so wretchedly. Holy Gospel, spread to every corner of the world. Glory of God, dispel all darkness. Great God of light, destroy all evil. As the fence door fell, a dazzling holy light shone in from the other side of the door. At the same time, a hymn rang in the ears of Wang Yu and the Chuanjin crowd. The hymn was magnificent and solemn. It traveled from afar to the ears of the crowd. It made their blood boil, and they couldn't help but want to worship it. Fortunately, everyone had good willpower. They knew what they were here for, so they resisted the urge to kneel down and worship it. No wonder the God of Light had so many believers. It had to be said that this group of gods was quite extravagant. Just a single hymn could make people involuntarily submit to them. After the holy light dissipated, the scene around Wang Yu's group changed from a garden to a huge temple. There was a throne at the front of the temple, and a man dressed in white was lying on the throne. A golden barrier of light enveloped the man in white, making it impossible to see his appearance clearly, and his attributes could not be detected. However, it was not difficult to guess that this fellow should be the awakening son of the Holy Soul. On both sides of the throne of the Son of the Holy Soul stood two angels with solemn expressions. These two angels were dressed similarly to the guardian angels outside. They were both clad in golden armor and exuded a holy light. The difference was that the guardian angel on the outside had 2 wings, while the angels on the 2 sides of the throne had 4 wings. Moreover, the weapons in the hands of these 2 angels were not long swords, shields, or crosses, but golden cross-shaped spears. Archangel Ada, LV85, Boss, Gold, Elite, Protoss, HP, 10000000 MP, 10000000 skills, Divine Judgment, Wrath of the God, Innate Ability, Holy Light Background Introduction, Superior Angel of the Heavenly Realm. Archangel Ada possesses unparalleled power and is the most important guardian of the Son of the Holy Soul. Angel of Wisdom Yali, LV85, Boss, Gold, Elite, Protoss, HP, 8000000 MP, 10000000 skills. Light of Destruction, Light's Praise Background Introduction. Superior Angel of the Heavenly Realm, Angel of Wisdom, possesses unparalleled wisdom, and is the most intimate follower of the Son of the Holy Soul. Seeing the attributes of these two angels, the people in Xuanzhen could not help but gasp. The person lying on the throne was not an ordinary person. They had played the game for so long and had seen countless bosses. They had also been fortunate enough to meet a celestial boss with Wang Yu. However, even a top-tier god boss like the Flame Monarch, Nephis, would only have elite monsters that were slightly stronger than normal monsters. However, the man in front of them, who was shrouded in a golden light shield, had 2 gold boss guards. Moreover, they were elite bosses. When they entered the door, they had already seen how difficult it was to deal with the celestial boss. Even a mere elite boss could cause Xuanzhen to panic, let alone the gold elite boss in front of them. Moreover, there were 2 of them at the same time. Although the skills of the players were basically well-rounded, and their equipment and attributes had also been upgraded, it was still difficult to kill a boss that was above their level. Not to mention the celestial boss in front of them. Even if it was an ordinary gold elite boss, it would still be difficult for ordinary players to defeat it without dying 3 to 5 times, let alone the celestial boss, which was a level higher than ordinary monsters. Even for a group of experts like Xuanzhen, it was still a challenge for a group of players to fight 2 celestial bosses that were 20 levels higher than them. If it were not for Wang Yu standing beside them, based on the personality of the people in Xuanzhen, they would have already run away. There was no other way. The setting of twin bosses had existed since the beginning of online games. It was not like everyone had not seen them in Rebirth. The strength of such a boss could not be measured by attributes alone, because their attributes seemed to be the same thing. Any random one of them would not be much stronger than a boss of the same level. However, when 2 bosses were together, it was not as simple as 1 plus 1. This was because under normal circumstances, these 2 bosses would usually have a set of combination skills, such as invincibility, immortality, rebirth, and so on. It was very disgusting to fight them. If one did not fight them dozens of times and could not figure out a specific strategy, it would be very difficult to kill them. Moreover, the 2 in front of them were celestials. That was the most disgusting of disgusting. Perhaps these 2 bastard angels would not be missing any of the shameless skills mentioned above. Looking at the 2 angels beside the throne, everyone could not help but cast a sympathetic look at Wang Yu. This was just a F*King storyline quest. Other people's storyline quests were at most a little more troublesome. As long as one was patient, it was not considered difficult. However, the difficulty of Wang Yu's storyline quest was so high that it could be said to be heaven-defying. Other people needed money to pass the storyline quest, but Wang Yu's storyline quest was simply asking for death. How bad did this person have to be to receive such a ridiculous storyline quest? It can only be said that crazy people receive quests that were unimaginable. Just as the people of Xuanzhen were looking at the angels on both sides of the throne, the 2 angels seemed to feel everyone's fiery gazes. The 2 angels, who had their eyes closed, suddenly opened their eyes. Seeing the people of Xuanzhen in front of them, the 2 angels frowned slightly. They revealed a disgusted expression as if they had eaten a fly. They glared at everyone and shouted in unison, "Lowly mortals, this is not a place for you to stay." Chapter 17:20. After hearing the angels' words, everyone finally understood. All non-human monsters seemed to have a sense of superiority. They kept talking about the lowly mortals. Wuji and the others from Xuanzhen were all veteran players. Naturally, they wouldn't stoop to the level of these immature angels. However, Wang Yu wasn't having it. He asked unhappily, "This is the humans' territory. Why can't we come here?" The fellow on the left called Ada snorted and said, "Because you despicable mortals aren't qualified." Qualified? Wang Yu raised his head and looked into Ada's eyes. He asked again expressionlessly, "Are you the one who calls the shots in our territory?" "Why?" Ada was slightly taken aback by Wang Yu's question. She stared at Wang Yu and asked, "Do you dare to challenge God's dignity?" No. Wang Yu waved his hand and said, "I never like to challenge people. At least you know what's good for you." Ada sneered and glanced at Wang Yu in disdain. Wang Yu paused for a moment and said, "This is the humans' territory. You've invaded the humans' territory, so you're the ones who are challenging us. So what? All invaders deserve to die. Wang Yu's eyes turned cold and filled with killing intent. When he said the word die, Wang Yu suddenly leaped up and charged toward Ada, who was beside the throne, like an arrow released from a bow. Just as Wang Yu and Ada were talking nonsense, the people from Xuanjin had also gotten into formation. When they saw Wang Yu charging toward them, Mingdu raised his staff and a thunderbolt descended from the sky. Immediately after, Yang Na and Exquisite Dream's arrows also shot toward Ada from behind Wang Yu. Ha! When Ada saw this, a look of surprise appeared on her face. However, it was fleeting. Ada then mocked in disdain. Interesting. Even an ant wants to resist. As she spoke, Ada waved the cross-shaped spear in her hand lightly and hit Mingdu's thunderstorm. After being hit by the spear, Baolei was like a baseball that had been hit. It strangely drew an arc in the air and landed on Ada's right. Boom! The powerful thunder smashed into the ground, creating a huge pit. F***CK. There's such a thing? Seeing that his magic was blocked by the boss in front of him, Mingdo's jaw dropped to the ground. This boss of the celestial race was too shameless. He even dared to do this. Of course, Mingdu's magic was not completely useless. The AI of an elite boss mainly knew how to judge the damage of its own skills and then make the correct block. The damage of Mingdu's thunderstorm was extremely high. In comparison, Wang Yu's attack was not even worth mentioning. The moment Ada waved her hand, Wang Yu was left wide open. In a flash, Wang Yu appeared in front of Ada and stabbed his finger into Ada's chest like a knife. Bang! A muffled sound. -1, 2, 4, 4, 5, 4. A huge damage number floated up from Ada's head. Ada was hit and took a few steps back. A trace of golden blood flowed down from the corner of Ada's mouth. After being injured by Wang Yu, Ada was shocked and angry. She wiped the golden blood from the corner of her mouth and said angrily, "Lowly ant, how dare you injure me?" Yoopht. Before Ada could finish her line, Wang Yu took a step forward and thrust his right hand forward. The boxing glove in his hand changed into a long rod, and he accurately stabbed it into Ada's mouth. He used a physical attack to force the rest of Ada's words into her mouth. Without waiting for Ada to recover, Wang Yu pulled the long rod in his hand and switched his weapon to the boxing glove. With Wang Yu's pull, Ada was pulled forward 2 steps. Wang Yu himself also used the pull to cut in front of Ada. At this time, Ada also reacted. Without another word, she waved the spear in her hand and was about to hit Wang Yu. However, this angel had overlooked a practical problem. Although an inch longer was an inch stronger, that was within the range of control. If someone broke through the range of control, the concept of an inch longer was an inch stronger would no longer exist. Ada's spear was at least 2 meters long, so the spear's range of control was at least 2 meters. If Wang Yu did not enter this range, he would definitely be at a disadvantage when fighting a long weapon with his bare hands. However, Wang Yu was now less than half a meter away from Ada. It was obvious that the spear in Ada's hand could not be used properly, so it had basically become a burden. At this distance, Wang Yu's fist was the most advantageous weapon. Seeing that Ada was about to swing her spear, Wang Yu smiled. He faced his right palm toward the sky and suddenly lifted it up. Bang! Without any deviation, he firmly supported Ada's chin. Wang Yu's attributes were still very strong. He also used Ferocious Tiger Strike on this palm. Although Ada had a level suppression of 16, she was still hit by Wang Yu's palm and her head was thrown back. Her movement of wielding the spear was also forcefully interrupted, and her original attack became a skill stun. Wang Yu took the opportunity to turn around and went behind Ada. She grabbed Ada's hair with one hand and pulled her back fiercely. Her right leg flashed with a bolt of lightning and stomped heavily on Ada's calf. Ada was only a gold tier boss. How could she withstand the priority of Wang Yu's thunderstomp? Plop! Ada's body uncontrollably knelt on the ground like a sinner. Oh, Protoss, you're still kneeling to humans. After hanging out with Xuanjin for a long time, Wang Yu's mouth was also very despicable. Although he could not win against Xuanzhan hounds, it was easy for him to bully an NPC. After kicking Ada to the ground, he did not forget to stab a knife into Ada's arrogant pride. Being kicked to the ground by a lowly human, Ada was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She struggled to get up. Wang Yu would not let this thing go. Wang Yu grabbed both of Ada's wings with both hands and pulled them back. He raised his knee and hit the back of Ada's head with a heavy knee. Bang! With a loud sound, the terrifying impact of Wang Yu's knee penetrated Ada's head. A visible blue shockwave burst out from Ada's face. -321-454 blood. Red numbers floated up. Ada was knocked to the ground by Wang Yu's attack. A mosquito coil even appeared on her head. This thing was actually knocked out by Wang Yu's knee. Actually, thinking about it, Ada did not feel wronged. Wang Yu was so overpowered. Not to mention a mere level 85 gold tier boss. Wang Yu had even killed dark gold epic bosses of the same level before. Even the level 80 god boss, Luke, was killed by Wang Yu. Who was Luke? The Light God King. Even the son of the Holy Spirit lying on the throne was a little brother in front of Luke. Chapter 17:21. Ada was pinned to the ground by Wang Yu. Naturally, Yali, the other angel of wisdom, would not stand by and watch her companion get beaten up. She leaped behind Wang Yu, pulled out her spear, and stabbed at Wang Yu's back. Kaboom! Just as Yali's spear was about to hit Wang Yu, Mingdu raised his staff, and another bolt of lightning descended from the sky. Yali and Ada were on par with each other in terms of strength. If Ada could block Mingdu's thunderstorm spell, then Yali could too. Without waiting for the bolt of lightning to descend, Yali waved her holy cross spear, and Mingdu's thunderstorm landed directly on Wang Yu. F***CK. Seeing this, Mingdu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. This boss was indeed shameless. He even knew how to graft flowers onto trees. However, even though the boss was shameless, such tricks were useless against Wang Yu. The moment Yali swung her spear, Wang Yu rolled to the side as if she had eyes on her back. Boom! With a loud bang, Mingdu's magic brushed past Wang Yu's body and descended from the sky, crashing heavily onto Ada's head. -322145, a string of damage values floated up, and Ada's HP bar was reduced by another layer. Unexpectedly, Yali waved her left hand, and a holy light enveloped Ada. Ada's HP was instantly restored to full, and even the paralysis effect was lifted on the spot. Just as everyone had expected, this Protoss boss was as disgusting as ever. The previous monsters would kill each other, and these two bosses were even more disgusting than the previous ones. Seeing Ada jump around with full HP, Wang Yu could not help but sigh. Who would have thought the healers are the most hated class in the game? Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was slightly stunned. Then, they looked at Wuji and nodded. Old cow is right. Just like the other twin bosses, these two angels not only knew how to heal each other, but they also raised their holy cross spears and crossed them, forming a huge cross. Then, rays of dazzling golden light shot out, enveloping the two of them. It's a combination skill. Hurry up and interrupt him. Seeing that the two angels were colluding with each other, Wuji immediately gave the order to attack. Both of Mingdu's thunderstorm spells were blocked. In order not to hurt his teammates, Mingdu didn't dare to cast any spells. Instead, he chose to let Yang Na, an exquisite dream, fire from a distance. Just then, the dazzling golden light dissipated, and Ada and Yali's bodies were covered in a faint layer of golden light. Clang! Dang! Clang! Yang Na and Ling Long Meng's arrows also landed on them. One of the two girls was the main controller, while the other was the main damage dealer. Their teamwork was quite strong, but the arrows did not have any effect on the two angels. They only dealt a series of -1 damage. After healing each other, the two bosses used the second skill of the twin bosses, invincibility. It seemed that the game's setting really hadn't changed for hundreds of years. The twin bosses always had the same 3 moves. If there were no accidents, the next thing to do would be to revive. After all, They were celestial bosses. Reviving them was really not a problem for them. Of course, they had to first break the invincibility state on the two angels. Logically speaking, although the three moves of the twin bosses were extremely cliché, it was also the one that players were most helpless against. It was really rare to see twin bosses with invincibility. The only ones that they had any impression of were the two brothers Goldhorn and Silverhorn from a dungeon that they had fought a long time ago. These two were in an invincible state, and the best way to deal with them was also extremely deceptive. If Wang Yu hadn't forcefully snatched Silverhorn's weapon, no one would have guessed that these two invincible bosses were actually mutually exclusive. They had to use their own weapons to kill each other. The situation with the two angels in front of them was different from the last time they encountered them. At that time, the two of them had invincibility as soon as they appeared. The system's setting was that they were mutually exclusive. However, the invincibility of these two angels was a combination skill. They were not invincible by themselves. Using the method to deal with Goldhorn and Silverhorn would definitely not work against these two angels. The only thing everyone could do now was to wait for these two angels' invincibility state to end. Wuji had a lot of experience in fighting monsters. When he saw the two angels' shameless posture, he ordered the Chuanjin people, everyone retreat, pay attention to tactical positioning, and dodge the skills. But at this time, Wang Yu stared at the two angels covered in golden light and said to himself, "This golden light looks a little familiar. It's the same color as dollar. How can it not be familiar?" Wuji replied impatiently. "We'll hide first. You do as you please." After saying that, Wuji and the others split up and ran to different corners of the temple. Not everyone was Wang Yu. According to the usual online game style, the only way to deal with a boss with invincibility was to avoid it. Otherwise, the boss would not be able to hold back, and one hit would be very painful. As Chuanjin and the others ran in all directions, the two angels jumped down from the sides of the god's throne. After being beaten up by Wang Yu, Ada did not seem to be in a good mood. She pointed at Wang Yu and scolded, "Lowly human, how dare you look down on God's power? You will pay for this." As they spoke, Ada and Yali shook the spears in their hands. Their holy cross spears were covered in golden dough chi, and the tip of the spears suddenly emitted a 3-foot sharp light. That light was being activated by their Saint Energy Do Chi, and it seemed as though it was going to tear the space apart, making a hissing sound. All heresy is blasphemy against God. The two angels roared and thrust their spears forward at the same time, one from the left and one from the right, toward Wang Yu. Both of them were bosses, and one could imagine the power of their spears. Although their moves were simple, they were very skillful. However, in the eyes of an expert like Wang Yu, their moves were full of flaws. Facing the two long spears that were thrusting towards him, Wang Yu did not retreat. Instead, he charged forward and tilted his body slightly, dodging the spear thrusts. He then charged into the gap between the two Holy Cross spears. At the same time, Wang Yu grabbed the handles of the two Holy Cross spears. He then took a step forward and instantly shortened the distance between him and the two angels to within 2 meters. Seeing this, the two angels were shocked and immediately pulled back, intending to retrieve their spears. It could be said that there was a huge difference between an elite boss and an intelligent boss. If it were a slightly smarter boss, they would definitely not pull back their weapons. With this pull, Wang Yu borrowed the force and leaped into the air. His feet left the ground, and his 2 big feet kicked the faces of the 2 angels, one on the left and one on the right, with lightning flashing on them. Chapter 17:22. Although Ada and Yali were in an invincible state, they were still affected by the judgment. Wang Yu not only used his own strength in this thunderstomp, but he also used the strength of the 2 angels to pull back their weapons. Duong, duong. With 2 muffled sounds, Ada and Yali were kicked back by Wang Yu at the same time. They staggered and almost fell. The golden light on the 2 bosses' bodies had also dimmed a little. If one did not look closely, one would not be able to tell. Wang Yu's eyesight was so good that he immediately noticed the change in the golden light. At that moment, Wang Yu finally realized why the golden light looked so familiar. He even wanted to kick it. It turned out that this was the Light Lord Luke's golden light barrier. Luke was the king of the celestial race, the leader of the celestial race. As the celestial race's professional fighters, it was reasonable that the two angels could learn some of Luke's moves. If other players saw the two angels in an invincible state, they would probably run to an enemy like Wuji and the others. However, these two were unlucky enough to encounter Wang Yu. Wang Yu was very experienced in dealing with the golden light barrier. Of course, he knew that it would take a few consecutive hits to break it. Therefore, after the two angels were stunned, Wang Yu did not stop. He landed on the ground and bent down. He grabbed the two angels' ankles and used ferocious tiger strike to pull them back. The two angels, who were already unstable, were pulled to the ground by Wang Yu. Wang Yu quickly stepped forward and stomped on Ada. He shouted to the Chuanjin players behind him, "Stop hiding! Hurry up and help pull the other one. Damage output in an invincible state, my ass." Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was actually quite unhappy. After all, in this kind of situation, the further away they were from the bosses, the safer they would be. There was no need to stoop to the level of an invincible god. However, since Wang had already said so, everyone was too embarrassed to stay still. Ling Longmeng and Yang Na, whose hands were longer, raised their crossbows and shot a few arrows at Yali, who was lying beside Wang Yu. These two angels were both elite bosses. They had the setting of picking on the weaklings. After experiencing Wang Yu's methods, Yili naturally did not dare to attack Wang Yu again. Therefore, even though Yang Na and Exquisite Dream did not deal any damage to Yili, they easily took over Yili's aggro. Yili straightened her back and raised the spear in her hand. The four wings on her back spread out, and she turned into a streak of white light as she pounced towards Yang Na and Ling Longmeng. Yang Na were only 20 meters away from Yili. In the blink of an eye, Yili had already arrived beside Yang Na, her Holy Cross spear thrusting towards Yang Na's chest. Although Yang Na's martial arts were not as crazy as Wang Yu's, she was still considered an expert among the younger generation. She was much stronger than ordinary players. Just like Wang Yu, Yang Na did not instinctively retreat when faced with Yili's attack. Instead, she twisted her legs and dodged Yili's attack in a strange manner. She then took a step forward and got closer to Yili. She raised her right hand and pointed the crossbow at Yili's face. Duong, an arrow that was obviously much thicker than a normal crossbow bolt, was shot out from Yang Na's crossbow and hit Yili in the face. Poof! The golden light around Yili's body dimmed slightly, and she was forced back a few steps by Yang Na. Shock arrow! At this time, Chuanjin's other players also rushed over from all directions. Since the boss had activated her invincibility, it was reasonable for everyone to find a place to hide. But now that the boss was charging at them, it was unreasonable for everyone to not even defend. Yang Na's shock arrow had a knockback effect and a temporary stun effect. Yali was currently in invincibility mode. Other than the knockback and pull effect, she had no other control skills. So, Yali was only stunned for a moment before she raised her spear once more and swung it at Exquisite Dream, who was standing beside Yang Na. Ming Jian Daoxue was the weakest person in the Quanjin sect. In fact, Ming Jian Daoxue's death was a bit unjust. Dream Exquisite was an intelligent archer, but she couldn't deal damage and couldn't survive. She didn't even have the basic ability to escape. She could be said to be trash. Ming Jian Daoxue's strength was also above hers. Of course, no matter how useless Ming Jian Daoxue was, he wouldn't compare himself to a girl. Moreover, Exquisite Dream was easy to control, so she was usually more useful than Ming Jian Daoxue. That was why Ming Jian Daoxue considered himself to be the weakest in all of Chuanjin. Although Angel of Wisdom Yali's level wasn't high, she was still a level 85 Gold Elite boss. With the Celestial race's privileges, she wasn't much weaker than the average Dark Gold Elite. With Exquisite Dream speed, it was impossible for her to dodge. However, just as Yili was about to kill Ling Longmeng with his spear, Yin Lauer raised his shield and stood in front of Ling Longmeng. He raised his middle finger at Yili and shouted, "Grandson!" Yali's spear involuntarily collided with Yin Lauer's shield. Clang! Following the sound of metal clashing, Yali and Yin Lao air forcefully blocked the boss's attack. Before Yali could react, the air behind her suddenly distorted. Northern Sea Yo-Yu appeared and smashed her dagger into the back of Yali's head. To place one's pride, Bao San and the others' attacks landed behind Yali at almost the same time. However, Yali was currently in an invincible state. Not only were their attacks unable to deal any damage, but they were also unable to control her. Taking on everyone's attacks head-on, Yali flipped the spear in her hand. Her spear was covered in battle aura, and she swung it in a circle behind her. The powerful holy light battle aura enveloped the angel spear. It had a destructive power, and everywhere it passed, the ground would be scraped up. Damn! Northern Sea Yo-Yu was shocked. She rolled on the ground and burrowed headfirst into the ground, barely dodging the attack. Bao San used triple slash to quickly escape. To place one's pride didn't have any effective escape skills. Seeing that he was about to be killed, Wuji raised his staff and cast a holy light shield on to place one's pride. Dong! Invincible against invincible. Whoever had the greatest strength was awesome. To place one's pride was pitifully hit in the waist by the boss's spear. He was sent flying like a baseball. Despicable mortals, how dare you sneak attack the servant of God? After repelling the Chuanjin members, Yali raised the holy cross spear in her hand to the sky and shouted angrily, "Retreat!" These old dogs of Chuanjin were cunning. As soon as they heard Yali's words, they knew that she was going to blow it up. Without another word, they immediately turned around and ran. As expected, they didn't run far before they saw Yali's spear pointing. Beams of dazzling white light descended from the sky and smashed into the ground. With Yali as the center, everything within a 10-meter radius was covered by the holy light. When the holy light fell, it created huge pits in the ground. Seeing this scene, the Chuanjin members couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Chapter 17:23. Many things were easier said than done. Everyone stood there and watched as Wang Yu pummeled the boss, as if he was a father beating his own son. However, they only realized how ferocious this boss was when they tried it themselves. After all, it was a level 85 Gold Elite boss. It was not an exaggeration to say that it had such strength, if not for the fact that they were already used to Wang Yu's incomprehensible strength. Everyone would have suspected that they were fighting a fake boss. Although they were both bosses, Ada was many levels lower than the light main god Luke. Naturally, the invincible golden light on her body was not as powerful as Luke's. Just as the Chuanjin people were entangled with Yali, Wang Yu had already made the golden light on Ada's body lose its luster. The golden light on Luke's body needed at least 200 consecutive hits to break through. When Wang Yu hit his 50th consecutive hit, the golden light on Ada's body finally could not hold on any longer. With a crash, the golden light on Ada's body shattered like glass and scattered all over the ground. Invincible state deactivated. Even under the invincible state, Ada could not open her eyes from Wang Yu's attacks. Now that the invincible state was deactivated, Wang Yu's various control skills also came into effect. Ada naturally had no way of fighting back. Just as Ada's golden light shattered, Wang Yu grabbed Ada's shoulders with both hands and pulled her in front of him. Then he suddenly raised his knee. Knee strike. Stun. Knee rush. Not back. Martial God kicked forcefully and followed up with a kick, sending Ada flying from the ground into the air. Immediately after, Wang Yu leaped up and landed a solid shadow chain kick on Ada's head. Minus 41,245 minus 124,456 minus 301,113 minus 100 minus 272,245. A huge string of damage numbers floated above Ada's head. Ada's 10 million HP was instantly reduced by close to 1/10. Knee strike was a grab skill, so its damage was not particularly high. However, knee rush, martial god forceful kick, and blink chain kick were all Wang Yu's ultimate skills. A single kick could take a life. This was especially true for martial god Forceful Kick. Its power could be said to be the greatest among all of Wang Yu's skills. One could just imagine how much damage Ada had to endure. Fortunately, Ada was a level 85 warrior-type boss. Not only did it have thick skin and thick flesh, it also had as much as 10 million HP. If it was a normal mini-boss or player, they would probably have already returned to the spawn point and reported in. Of course, Wang Yu didn't plan to let Ada off just like that after serving her for a while. Clack! After the kick, Wang Yu was the first to land on the ground. Without waiting for Ada to land on the ground, Wang Yu circulated his inner energy in his right hand, and the blue light immediately shone brightly. The martial artist's powerful inner energy materialized into a blue spear in Wang Yu's hand. Defense. Condensed aura into weapon. It was the ultimate Chi master skill that used inner energy to materialize a weapon to attack the target. Aiming at the falling Ada, Wang Yu shouted and threw the spear with force. Whoosh! The spear formed by inner energy streaked across the air like a blue light, instantly flying in front of Ada. Pooh! The sound of weapon piercing flesh could be heard. The spear accurately stabbed into Ada's heart. The blade of the spear pierced through Ada's back, and after sending Ada flying for several meters, Ada was firmly pinned to the pillar of the temple. Her forewings drooped, and she looked very much like the god of light who had been crucified. It was obvious that she had been stunned. -2-47546, another huge damage number floated above Ada's head. At this moment, Wang Yu clenched his right hand. Boom! The long spear exploded. -254545, another chunk of the health bar above Ada's head fell. The stun effect of condensed aura into weapon only lasted for a short second on Ada's body. Wang Yu's figure flashed and instantly appeared in front of Ada. He pushed his palms forward and used avalanche. -410214. This palm strike was an attack that condensed 100% of Wang Yu's inner energy. Just one strike alone dealt a terrifying damage of 400,000. With this palm strike, Ada spat out a mouthful of golden blood. Her entire body was pressed deep into the stone pillar behind her by Wang Yu. This was also because Rebirth tried its best to reduce the gore. Otherwise, if Wang Yu's palm strike landed on Ada, the scene would definitely be extremely exciting. After doing all this, Wang Yu calmly snapped his fingers. Snap! Bang! 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 With the snap of Wang Yu's fingers, Ada's body began to explode. 1651473. I'm not exaggerating. I calculated this number using a calculator. A huge 7-digit damage number floated above Ada's head. Holy light shone in from the window of the temple, shining on the 7-digit damage number. It was especially eye-catching. Profound meaning, break when attacking a target, a layer of hidden force would be added. Activating the hidden force would trigger the sum of all the previous damage. Ada was a warrior-type boss, and her total health was only 10 million. Wang Yu's attack instantly took away 1/3 of Ada's health bar. Such a terrifying damage output made even the people of Chuanjin, who were used to seeing Wang Yu's craziness, dumbfounded. Looking at the 7-digit damage number that had yet to dissipate above Ada's head, the people of Chuanjin felt like their hearts were going to shatter along with their worldview. Rebirth had been launched for almost a year. Most of the players had already reached level 60. Whether it was skills, attributes, or equipment, everyone had already taken shape. However, the most ferocious damage output professions were known as mages. Their maximum damage was only close to 6 digits. Those mages who could deal more than 6 digits of damage were known as top-notch experts. Those who could be on par with a freak like Mingdu were known as top-notch experts. So far, there were no more than 3 mages in the entire game who could be known as top-notch experts. However, with Wang Yu's attack, everyone in Chuanjin lost hope in themselves. Wang Yu had always been the goal that everyone in Chuanjin wanted to surpass. In the hearts of the people in Chuanjin, everyone's equipment and attributes were about the same. The only difference between them and Wang Yu was their control. However, when they saw Wang Yu's damage output. The people in Xuanzhen completely knelt down. Not only was his control inferior, they were essentially left in the dust. Among them, the one who suffered the most was Mingdu. As a top-notch mage, Mingdu had always been a head above Wang Yu with his damage output. However, when he saw Wang Yu's 7-digit damage output, Mingdu almost couldn't control his emotions. Was he still AF * King Human? Was he going to let the others live? At this moment, the people in Xuanzhen who were familiar with Wang Yu couldn't help but think of a phrase that had been circulating on the forum for a long time. All life is equal under the feet of Iron Ox. As expected, this phrase was definitely not just for show. Chapter 1724. Even though the Grandmaster of Combat class in Rebirth was set to have many shortcomings and was not well received by the players, in all fairness, the Grandmaster of Combat was definitely the class that Soaring Dragon Company had spent the most effort on. Not to mention the elegance and handsomeness of the Grandmaster of Combat. Even the modeling of the class was done by professionals. Even the background story of Rebirth, the strongest hero, Martial God, was also a Grandmaster of Combat. This showed how powerful the Grandmaster of Combat was in the game setting. The reason why the Grandmaster of Combat class was so criticized was because the difficulty level of the Grandmaster of Combat was too high from the beginning. It was not a class that could be mastered by a newbie. How could a Grandmaster of Combat deal damage? Skill effects combined with normal attacks to perform multiple combo attacks. Just this basic operation alone was enough to kick 90% of the players out of the Grandmaster of Combat team. Normal players couldn't master it, and the chances of this class being a scam would only increase. Over time, the Grandmaster of Combat became a famous synonym for sinkholes in the game. Even at the beginning of the game, there were many teams that said they did not want a Grandmaster of Combat. Because of this, most of the Grandmasters of Combat started to walk the path of tanking. As a result, the current Grandmasters of Combat had turned an agile damage output class into a tank. At this moment, Wang Yu used his own actions to show everyone what a real Grandmaster of Combat was. Just the set of operation that Wang Yu performed just now could become an epic teaching video for the Grandmaster of Combat players. People of other classes might not feel anything, but as a Grandmaster of Combat, he understood the current situation of a Grandmaster of Combat best. Seeing how clean and elegant Wang Yu was and how terrifying his combo attack was, to place one's pride almost knelt down in front of Wang Yu. At this moment, there were no words that could describe to place one's pride's feelings. Under Wang Yu's attacks, a high-level boss like Ada was no different from a normal monster. It was just taking a beating. It was just that Ada was a boss and could only take a few more hits. After a series of consecutive attacks, Ada was beaten up so badly that she could not even defend herself. She was in a state where she could neither live nor die. If Ada had an intelligent mind, she would probably be regretting that she was a warrior-type boss. Punch after punch, every punch landed on flesh. The HP bar above Ada's head decreased at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few minutes, the HP bar above Ada's head was finally emptied. She let out a blood-curdling scream and lay on the ground. Seeing Ada lying on the ground, Wang Yu's expression did not relax in the slightest. Instead, it was filled with seriousness. It was not difficult to tell from the monsters at the front that Garden of Eden was just a map that belonged to wild monsters and not a dungeon. The monsters in the instance dungeon would leave their corpses behind after they died. However, if a wild monster died, regardless of whether it was a Protoss or not, its corpse would not be exposed to the wilderness. Instead, it would turn into white light and disappear. This Ada did not turn into white light and merely lay on the ground. There must be something fishy going on. After all, this was a twin boss of the Protoss. Resurrection was a basic skill. As expected, it was just as Wang Yu had expected. The moment Ada fell to the ground, Yali, who was being held back by the Quanjin players, used the twin boss's third axe to resurrect. Resisting the attacks of the Quanjin players, Yali crossed her arms in front of her chest devoutly. The four wings on her back lit up with a golden light, and the dazzling light condensed into the shadow of the goddess of light behind Yali. Light breaks through the darkness and descends upon the world, dispelling all disease and pain for the people of God. Following the melodious hymn, golden light sprinkled on Ada's body. Ada's HP bar was instantly restored to full. Ada floated in the golden light and once again stood in front of Wang Yu. Praise of light. Looking at the resurrected Ada, Wu Ji frowned and shouted at Wang Yu, "Old cow, you deal with this one. Kill Angel Ji first." It was obvious that Ada's resurrection was due to Yali's praise of light. Under such circumstances, it was only natural for them to get rid of the target with the resurrection skill first. Okay, Wang Yu nodded and jumped back to the Quan Jin players with a few leaps. He rushed in front of Yali and raised his hand to slap her a few times. One should not hit people in the face, and one should not expose their shortcomings. Originally, the Quan Jin players did not shatter Yali's invincible golden light, so they did not deal much damage to her. Thus, Yali did not hate them much. However, when Wang Yu slapped her, he directly angered Yali, and her hatred returned to Wang Yu. Slap, 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 slap. Following a few crisp slaps, Yali shouted angrily and swept her spear toward Wang Yu. Wang Yu rarely hit women, let alone something as ungentlemanly as slapping them. However, Wu Ji had previously told Wang Yu that angels only had shapes and no gender. Thus, hitting Yali was not considered hitting a woman. At most, it was hitting a cross-dressing boss. Wang Yu would not feel guilty no matter how he hit such a disgusting thing. Wang Yu took over Yali's aggro, and the Quan Jin players hurriedly rushed over to stop Ada. Yin Lao Air took the lead. He raised a shield in front of Ada and used taunt on her. Ada had been beaten up so badly by Wang Yu, so of course, her aggro would not be as simple as Wang Yu taking over Yali's aggro. The furious Ada did not care about Yin Lao Air's obstruction at all. After being dragged over by Yin Lao Air's taunt, Ada directly used charge and collided head-on with Yin Lao Air. Ada was a boss. No matter how strong Yin Lao Air's attributes were, he was no match for the boss. He was sent flying by Ada. Seeing this, the Quan Jin players hurriedly tried to stop her. Unfortunately, even a shield warrior like Yin Lao Air could not stop a boss, let alone other classes. Ada charged forward and broke through the Quan Jin players' encirclement without much effort. Seeing that Ada was about to reach Wang Yu, a vine suddenly appeared under Ada's feet. As a boss, Ada's reaction was not slow. Sensing the abnormality under her feet, Ada quickly jumped back. This jump was not a big deal, and she jumped right into a black circle. Ada was slightly stunned when she saw the black circle under her feet. Boom! The black circle suddenly rose up and broke through the ground, surrounding Ada in the middle. Dark barrier. At the same time, Chun Xiang, who was not far away, smiled. The book of sealing in his left hand emitted a demonic reddish-black glow. Following that, many terrifying evil spirits darted out from the ground outside the barrier, forming a circle and sealing off Ada's path of retreat. How could one fight a boss head-on? It was better to use control skills. Ada was no longer in an invincible state, and control effects were no longer ineffective against her. Ada would definitely not be able to break out of this dark barrier. After controlling Ada, the Quan Jin players quickly walked forward and surrounded Ada. They gave her a round of punches and pulled back her aggro. Chapter 17:25. While everyone was pulling aggro, Wang Yu had already shattered Yali's protective golden light with a combo attack. Ada was a warrior-type boss. She was no match for Wang Yu in close combat, let alone Yali, who was a mage-type boss. In no time, Yali was reduced to critical health by Wang Yu. In the end, Wang Yu stomped Yali into the ground with a thunder stomp. The health bar above Yali's head emptied, and she turned into a corpse. Seeing this, Wang Yu could not help but reveal a puzzled expression. Ada's corpse was left behind after being killed because Yali had a skill like Light's Praise that allowed her to wait for resurrection. Could it be that Ada also had a resurrection skill after Yali died? Blasphemer, feel the wrath of God. Just as Wang Yu was feeling puzzled, Ada's body lit up with a golden light from afar, repelling the Chuanjin people. Then, Ada stabbed the spear in her hand into the ground and let out a furious roar at the sky. Whoa! A melodious horn sounded. Just like Ada, Yali, who was lying on the ground, instantly recovered her health bar and stood up energetically. Upon seeing such an unbelievable scene, not only Wang Yu, but everyone from the Chuanjin sect also spat out a mouthful of blood. Too shameless. No matter how shameless other bosses were, they would at most heal each other. As long as one was killed, the other would be easy to deal with. However, these two actually healed each other. How could they let others live? F***CK, how do we fight this? Even a ruthless person like Wang Yu, who had slaughtered countless bosses, felt a headache coming on. This was simply shameless. If you died, I would resurrect you. If I died, you would resurrect me. If this went on, there would be no end. Of course, Wang Yu had encountered bosses that could not die. However, those bosses had special tools on them. As long as they were lured away from each other, the tools would lose their effectiveness. But these two angels are different. Right now, one of them is at the door, while the other is near the throne. The two of them are thousands of miles away from each other, and they're still casting their resurrection skills at each other. They're clearly one. Looking at the two shameless bastards, everyone in Chuanjin turned to look at Wuji. As the saying goes, to deal with shameless people, you have to be even more shameless than them. The Chuanjin guys admitted that they were not upright people, but compared to these two angels, they were still inferior in terms of shamelessness. The only one who could fight with them was the leader of the Chuanjin group, Mr. Wuji. Oh, about that. Wuji rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment. Then he said, "Don't stop, everyone. Keep fighting. If we can't even kill him, what's the point of beating him up?" Everyone said angrily. It wasn't as if everyone hadn't seen what these two bosses had done. These two bastards were killing each other over and over again. There was no point in continuing to fight. When Wuji heard this, he scolded, "I told you to fight, so just fight. What's with all this nonsense? Hurry up. Trash." Although that was what he said, everyone understood Wuji's personality. They knew that he must have his reasons for asking everyone to do this. So, everyone gave Wuji the middle finger and continued to attack Ada. In the distance, Wang Yu also continued to attack the revived Yali. Soon, Yali was hit by Wang Yu to critical health. Just as Wang Yu was about to kill her with a kick, Wuji suddenly stopped him. "All right, stop fighting. Just keep her health at this value. Don't let her recover." "This okay?" Wang Yu responded with a confused look on her face. She stopped attacking Yali and turned her attention to harassing her instead. As a Protoss boss, Yali would, of course, try to heal herself when her health was low. However, with Wang Yu around, Yali didn't even have a chance to fight back. Why would Wang Yu let her heal herself? Yali raised her hand to heal herself, but Wang Yu slapped her, interrupting Yali's skill. After an unknown period of time, the HP bar above Ada's head was only left with a sliver. Just at this moment, Wuji suddenly shouted, "Everyone, attack with all your might." Hearing Wuji's command, Wang Yu finally understood what Wuji meant. Since these two bosses could kill each other, the solution was simple. They just had to kill both of them. He didn't believe that there would still be someone to heal them if they died at the same time. This was also thanks to Wang Yu's ability to suppress the bosses and accurately control their health. If they were like Chuanjin's group, who could fight the bosses back and forth, it would be difficult to kill both bosses at the same time. Flash Chain Kick. Martial God's Forceful Kick. Thunderblast. Following Wuji's command, everyone used their sure kill skills. The two bosses, who already had a sliver of health left, naturally couldn't withstand the sure kill skills of Chuanjin's group. Lowly mortals, the servants of God, shall live forever in the light. Following the wails of the two angels, both of them turned into white light. Eternal life? Even at this time, these two still looked like cultists who had been brainwashed. Even a light God King had been killed. Crash. When the two bosses died, they dropped a bunch of items on the ground. D*MN. These two bosses are really rich. Seeing the sparkling golden items on the ground, Chuanjin's members almost drooled. As expected of Protoss bosses, the drop rate was really high. Logically speaking, the two angels were Wang Yu's quest monsters, but they still dropped so many items. The drop rate of monsters in other dimensions was indeed worthy of their reputation. However, when they saw the attributes of the items on the ground, they couldn't help but pout. Holy Spear, Dark Gold, Attack, Level Requirement. 70 Holy Light Armor, Plate Armor, Gold, Defense, Level Requirement. 70. The two angels had dropped 4 or 5 pieces of equipment, but the quality of the equipment was too horrible to look at. Apart from a dark gold spear that Xuanjin had no use for, the others were all ordinary gold-grade equipment. There was even silver-grade equipment. D*MN, these two bosses were Protoss. Even if they didn't drop celestial equipment, they would at least drop dark gold equipment. It would be a shame to drop silver-grade equipment. What's this? To place one's pride suddenly bent down and picked up a golden gem while everyone was looking at the two bosses' attributes. Then, he saw the golden gem's attributes. To place one's pride's eyes lit up. He was so excited that his mouth almost touched the back of his head. In the end, he was just a kid. His emotions were all written on his face. If it were those old thieves in Xuanjin, they would have secretly kept the items if they saw something good. What, little chick? Look at how happy you are. Take it out. To place one's pride's expression, Xuanjin's members surrounded him. Chapter 17:26. Heart of Phantasmal, Gem. A phantasmal crystal that has been blessed by the holy light. It shines with a golden radiance. Cannot be used to upgrade equipment levels. Usage level, none. Profession requirement, Master Blacksmith. F***CK. This is... Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw the gem into place one's pride's hand. Meow, this was a gem that could upgrade equipment levels. The level requirement of equipment had always been one of the most troublesome attributes for players. If the equipment's level requirement was too high, the players would be anxious if they couldn't use it. This situation was relatively easy to solve. There was a material in the game that could reduce the equipment's level requirement without reducing its attributes. Although it was a little expensive, it wasn't rare. If the level requirement was too low and the attributes could not keep up, players would be anxious to use it. In comparison, this situation was much worse than the previous one. The most important factor in upgrading equipment was the level requirement. The higher the level, the higher the attributes of the equipment. Even if it was a legendary equipment with a level requirement, the main attributes could not compare to a level 50 whiteboard. The leveling speed in Rebirth was not fast. In the beginning, people did not notice it. However, as the game progressed, the importance of the level of equipment became more apparent. To this day, most players in Rebirth were over level 60, but their equipment levels were stuck below level 40. Low-level monsters gave no experience, and high-level monsters could not be killed. This kind of situation made people very eager to level up their equipment. This gem that could increase the level of equipment was very valuable. No wonder To Place One's Pride kept it as soon as he saw the attributes. To Place One's Pride was the one who needed equipment levels the most out of everyone in Xuanjin. The others in Xuanjin also had low-level equipment, but their weapon levels were at the forefront of the game. To Place One's Pride was the only one who only had a level 20 weapon. Although the attributes were good enough to make many people envious, everyone had their own circle. To Place One's Pride circle was filled with crazy people. To Place One's Pride's mood could be imagined when compared to the crazy people in Xuanjin. After all, the damage output of a Grandmaster combat was not high. Without a decent weapon, To Place One's Pride was in an awkward position. Little Chick is not kind. He learned to cheat equipment. To Place One's Pride, Mingdu smirked and raised his eyebrows. This shameless fellow still had the nerve to say that others weren't kind. What do you mean unkind? Hearing Mingdu's words, Wuji interrupted with a dark expression. This isn't a dungeon. Of course, the items dropped by a wild boss belong to whoever picks them up. You just have to take it, chick. That's right. Oldly, who do you think you are? You already have a top-grade divine artifact. So why are you still fighting with a kid over a broken rock? Hearing what Wuji said, the others also glared at Mingdu. Although these guys from Chuanjin had a foul mouth, bad character, and liked to cheat people, they were still quite loyal to their friends. Everyone was well aware of the value of this gem, but to them, it was far less significant than to place one's pride. It was not that everyone did not know why Ming Jiandaoxua had gone berserk just now. Even such an experienced and mature fellow would throw a tantrum, let alone a brat who was still wet behind the ears. I didn't say anything after being criticized by everyone. Mingdu felt wronged and said, I was just lamenting that Chick has grown up. Tisich? Trash. Everyone gave Mingdu the middle finger. If it wasn't for Wuji stopping them, with Mingdu's personality, he would have probably rolled with to place one's pride. Of course, it wasn't that Mingdu wasn't loyal to his friends, but rather that he didn't understand things. He didn't understand things that others could understand. Looking at his age, his mental intelligence wasn't much different from to place one's prides. For example, when he mocked Ming Jiandaoxua just now, who would say something like that if they had the heart of an adult? The game was Jianghu, and Jianghu wasn't about fighting and killing, but about the ways of the world. Letting the people around you learn how to conduct themselves was also a form of responsibility as a friend. For example, Wang Yu, when he first entered the game, he was still a greenhorn. Now, under the influence of Chuanjin people, didn't he also become a wily old fox? Different from Wang Yu's well-behaved personality, Mingdu's personality was more reckless, so he needed someone to remind him at all times. To place one's pride was in a good mood after obtaining the heart of Phantasm. Grandmaster blacksmiths weren't easy to find in other enemies, but there were two in Chuanjin. He could level up his equipment later. To place one's pride was excited when he thought about how he no longer needed to show off his level 20 equipment. Although he didn't say any corny words of thanks, to place one's pride was still grateful to Wuji. Rather than saying that Wuji was good at observing people's hearts, it was better to say that Wuji was good at doing things. With just a few words, he was able to rope in the rebellious young man to place one's pride. To place one's pride was probably to place one's pride without any objections. To place one's pride was happy, but the others were still depressed. Meow. These two bosses have been so hard to fight, but in the end, they only dropped a pile of trash. The only valuable item was not sold for money. These bosses were really not worth it. What kind of Protoss boss is this? Don't you think it's shameful to bring such a small item? Yeah, no one can use the weapon it dropped. Everyone in Chuanjin started to talk about the boss. Hee hee. Just as everyone was dissatisfied with the boss, Wang Yu suddenly laughed. What are you laughing at? Did you pick up some good equipment? Seeing Wang Yu smile, the others couldn't help but ask. There were two bosses that had been killed just now. One of them was right in front of Wang Yu. No. Wang Yu shook his head and said, It's just a pile of trash equipment. Then why are you laughing? Everyone was surprised. The equipment is trash, but it dropped a skill book that wasn't that bad. As he said this, Wang Yu raised a golden skill book. At the same time, the skill book's attributes were sent to the party channel by Wang Yu. Light's Praise Volume 1, Epic Skill. Devout followers of the Light God can use the power of light to resurrect all dead party members within range of the skill. Level usage, 65 required class. Holy Priest item introduction. The most devout follower of the Light God, Archbishop Drast, received a call from God when he followed the Light God. He recorded it down, and it became the lifelong goal of all followers of the Light God. However, after thousands of years, only the Volume 1 is left. Light's Praise? Isn't it just resurrection? There were only a few epic skills for each class. They were the rarest of the rarest. However, everyone had seen Light's Praise just now. It was just a simple resurrection skill. Wuji already knew it, so when they saw the words epic skill, they didn't think much of it. However, after reading the skill's introduction, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. Chapter 1727. Group Resurrection, as the name suggested, was a spell that could resurrect many people at once. Players could respawn infinitely in the game, so life did not seem to be that valuable. Death was not scary either, but it depended on the comparison. After all, players would lose 1/10 of their current level's EXP every time they died. 1/10 of EXP was not a lot, but it was not a small amount either. Compared to top-tier equipment, rare skills, and other more precious worldly possessions, the loss of 10% of EXP wasn't a big deal. As long as everyone worked hard, they could earn it back. Other than that, there was probably nothing more important than EXP. After all, it was not easy to level up in Rebirth. In the early stages of the game, 1/10 of EXP could be earned back very quickly. However, in the later stages of the game, everyone knew how difficult it was to level up. This 1/10 of EXP could not be earned back without grinding for a week. Players who played the game often knew that leveling up was a very painful thing. It was torture to experience the pain again, without masochistic tendencies, who would be willing to linger in this endless pain. Moreover, dying would not only result in a loss of levels, but also a certain chance of dropping equipment. Therefore, resurrection was a very practical skill. Especially in PvP, the side with resurrection often saved time running to the resurrection point, which gave them a huge advantage. As for group resurrection, think about it. Just think about it. They had painstakingly killed the target, but with a wave of the hand, everyone was resurrected with full health. How frustrating would that be? Turning the tide of the battle was as easy as lifting a finger. From this, it could be seen that although the first volume of Light's Praise was only an epic skill, in terms of practical value, it was even better than a legendary skill. Holy Priest was the advancement of Light Priest. There was only one priest in Chuanjin, and that was Wuji. Based on the principle of distribution according to need, this skill book naturally went to Wuji. Wang Yu is also a nimble person, and he casually threw the skill book to Wuji. F***CK. F***CK. Seeing this, everyone was unhappy. Why should it be given to Wuji, that old dog? These bastards obviously knew why this skill book was given to Wuji. They just felt that it was unfair. Because I'm a priest. Wuji shrugged. Even if I gave it to you, you wouldn't be able to use it. Everyone curled their lips and said, then, in order to appease our hearts, shouldn't we do something? Well, Wuji nodded. He pondered for a moment and said, I also think it's necessary. Really? Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was a little surprised. Wang Yu couldn't help but ask, Are you a fake Wuji? Are you possessed by a monster? As he spoke, Wang Yu took out his stick and was about to hit Wuji's head twice. The reason why Wuji could become the boss of the Chuanjin gang was because of his shamelessness. Wuji only took advantage of others and never suffered any losses. He even asked others to pay for a drink. Now, he actually took the initiative to cater to other people's requests. It was really unbelievable. Stop fooling around. Wuji knew Wang Yu's ability. He knew that Wang Yu did not know how to control his morning stick. He quickly waved his hand and said, Just use gold coins to express your gratitude. Don't use your hands. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Then, they came to their senses. Mingdu stared and shouted, What the F***CK did you say? Do you want us to express our gratitude? Nonsense. Wuji rolled his eyes at Mingdu and said, Do you want me to express my gratitude? F***CK. Are you really shameless? Everyone said angrily, The only epic skill book has been learned by you, and you still want us to express our gratitude? Is there any justice in this world? Wuji said lazily, Do you think I want to learn this retarded skill? What good will it do me if I learn this skill? Once Wuji said this, the people from Chuanjin who were making a ruckus immediately quietened down. The 100 words of disdain toward Wuji were all stuffed back into their mouths. Although Wuji's words were a little unreasonable, no one could refute them. Everyone had seen the mechanism of the skill Light's Praise. It could only be used on dead players. It could not be like Redemption, which could also be used on players who were about to die. If that was the case, it was impossible for Wuji to resurrect himself after he died. Therefore, if Wuji learned this skill, it would not bring him any benefits. The direct beneficiaries would be the other people in Chuanjin. On the contrary, if it were someone else who learned this skill, Wuji might even be the one who benefited. Even so, everyone felt that something was wrong, but they did not know how to refute it. Seeing everyone's expressions, Wuji continued, "You bastards, hurry up and express your gratitude. Do you want to die? Be careful that I don't save you. F***ck me." Everyone was speechless. With Wuji's personality, it was child's play for him to leave someone in the lurch. What was more frightening was that Wuji was the commander-in-chief of the team. Even if he did not die, he could create the conditions for you to die. Who would dare to offend someone with such a vile character? Therefore, everyone took out a bag of gold coins and handed it to Wuji. They had no choice. It was better to offend a gentleman than a villain. Who said to express his gratitude just now? After taking out the money, the people from Xuanjin suddenly realized that they did not need to spend money. They did not know which idiot had made such an unreasonable request. It should be Old Li. To place one's pride pointed at Mingdu and said with a smirk, "Whoosh." Everyone's eyes were filled with killing intent as they looked at Radiant Doe and surrounded him. "Fathers, don't do this." Mingdu was shocked and quickly pointed at Wang Yu to change the topic. Old Cow did not express his gratitude just now. "Wuji, you have to treat everyone equally, understand? Otherwise, all of us will have a problem with you." "That's true." Wuji nodded and quickly took out half of the money bag in his arms. He walked over and handed it to Wang Yu and said, "Old Cow, this is yours." "Thanks." Wang Yu smiled and took the money bag without hesitation and stuffed it into his bag. Mingdu was stunned and shouted indignantly, "Why do we have to express our gratitude? But you have to express your gratitude to Old Cow." "Hee hee." Wuji smiled faintly and said, "Because Old Cow does not need me to resurrect him." Speaking up to this point, Wuji's face darkened. He continued, "Aren't you afraid that I will purposely torture him?" F***ck. Seeing Wuji's expression, everyone felt a chill down their spines. Swoosh! Just as the people from Xuanjin were fooling around, a strange sound suddenly reached everyone's ears. "What's going on?" Chapter 1728. Crack! With another strange cracking sound, the light barrier on the throne shattered into pieces, turning into specks of light that disappeared before everyone's eyes. Afterwards, a dazzling golden light shot out from the throne. At the same time, a terrifying pressure bore down on them, so much so that they could barely raise their heads. Only Wang Yu, who was a martial artist and had once killed a radiant god king, was not affected by the pressure at all. Instead, he just stared at the throne closely. The golden light dispersed, and a figure appeared on the throne. That person's face was as angular as if it had been carved by a knife. His long, golden hair draped behind his head, and his gray eyebrows were thin and long. His two blue eyes were as clear as a lake and as bright as the stars in the sky. Coupled with his white robes and pure white wings on his back, he gave off a unique aura of holiness and inviolability. To sum it up, he was handsome. Even a straight man like Wang Yu could not help but be slightly stunned when he saw that person's appearance. He secretly sighed at the strength of this game designer to be able to make a set of data so intricately. As he sighed, Wang Yu had a thought, and the person's stats appeared in front of Wang Yu. Son of the Holy Soul, less LV 100, boss, God tier, legendary, HP, MP, skills, talent. Background introduction. The son of the Holy Soul from the celestial realm, the strongest angel under the Radiant God, the spokesperson of light, and the most loyal believer of the Radiant God. In order to destroy darkness, he sealed his power and descended into the human world. Yan, under Wang Yu's gaze, the son of the Holy Soul, slowly opened his eyes. He raised his hands and stretched lazily. Every single movement he made was filled with a sense of friendliness, giving off an extremely intimate aura. As if sensing Wang Yu's gaze, Les looked around after yawning, before his gaze landed on Wang Yu and the Xuanjin people. Oh! Seeing that Wang Yu wasn't affected by his aura, Les was slightly taken aback and revealed a surprised expression. He narrowed his eyes and asked Wang Yu in a friendly manner, "Mortal, did you wake me up? It's us. It's us." Meanwhile, The rest of Chuanjin had also broken free from Les's coercion and regained their senses. Before Wang Yu could answer, the rest of Chuanjin's men hastily answered. We were the ones who awakened Prince Les. Wang Yu could not help but frown when he saw how Chuanjin and the others reacted. The people of Chuanjin had always been arrogant and unruly. They had never taken the so-called God of Light seriously. How could they treat the believers of the God of Light like that? Hee. Les laughed when he heard the words of Chuanjin and the others. Mere mortals, how dare you step into the palace of God? Killing ants like you will only dirty my hands. Please in your own lives, okay? Les's tone was very gentle, like a spring breeze. However, it was extremely strange for him to say those words in such an intimate tone. Not only did the people of Chuanjin not refute, but they also took out their weapons and were about to slit their throats. CK, are you guys crazy? Seeing that his companions had actually pulled out their swords and committed suicide, Wang Yu was shocked. He immediately gathered his strength and let out a deafening roar. Lion's Roar, an advanced skill of Qigong masters. Using inner strength to unleash a lion's roar, it could remove the abnormal status of one's target and cause a dizzy effect on the enemy. Lion's Roar was a close-range skill. Ordinary Qigong masters were usually cunning, so Lion's Roar was rarely used. However, Wang Yu was a master of close-range combat and a top-notch PvP expert. His mastery of Lion's Roar had already reached the pinnacle. Buzz! Wang Yu let out a lion's roar, which sounded like a great bell. The people of Chuanjin, who were about to wipe their necks with their weapons, suddenly felt a wong sound in their heads. The fog in their minds was immediately dispersed by the roar, and their minds became clear. Everyone quivered and immediately came to their senses. Huh? What's going on? Looking at the weapons on their necks, everyone revealed a look of horror. Back off! Wang Yu stretched out his arm and stood in front of the people of Chuanjin, saying, You were bewitched by this boss just now and almost committed suicide. There's such a thing? Hearing Wang Yu's words, the fear on the faces of the people of Chuanjin instantly turned into horror. CK, being brainwashed by the boss into committing suicide? Could this game be played like that? Could it be that this evil cult boss was of the same origin as pyramid selling? That was too shameless. They didn't expect deterrence to be used in such a way. These game designers were really crazy. Fortunately, Wang Yu didn't fall for it. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how they died. Les didn't seem to be angry. Seeing that Wang Yu had awakened the people of Chuanjin who were about to commit suicide, Les didn't get angry either. Instead, he smiled leisurely and leaned against the back of the throne. He crossed his legs and looked down at Wang Yu from above. He said gently, I didn't expect there to be an expert like you among the ants. I'm different from other gods. I'm a god who appreciates talent. I won't look down on your lowly human identity. With your abilities, are you willing to follow me and follow His Majesty, the God of Light? As soon as Les finished speaking, Wang Yu received a message. System notice. You have gained the favor of the Holy Soul's child, Les. He invites you to join the Light faction. Do you accept? Seeing the system notice, Wang Yu touched his chin in confusion. After thinking for a moment, he raised his head and asked, What's the benefit of following you? Benefit? Les chuckled and said, As long as you join the Light faction, not only can you and your friends leave this place alive, but you will also receive my blessing and successfully become a God's champion. Les's meaning was clear. As long as Wang Yu followed him, the battle between the two of them would be cancelled. Moreover, the following quests would also be cancelled. Wang Yu would also be promoted to an advanced class through the storyline trial. Such a choice was extremely tempting to anyone. After all, everyone did the storyline quest to advance. Who would want to fight a celestial boss to the death if they could easily pass the trial? Especially a level 100 boss like Lewis, who would have to fight two at the same time. Compared to Wang Yu's previous storyline quests, Les's choice could be said to be a shortcut for Wang Yu. This was like a job. Originally, he needed to work hard for more than a decade. Suddenly, he was chosen by a big boss of a top company and was going to make an exception and promote him. Under such circumstances, It was not difficult to choose. Oomph. However, Wang Yu sneered and said, "If I follow you, will I become a fighter of the light faction? Becoming the light god's servant is your honor." Les said sincerely. Chapter 17:29. Living in this world, one should not be enslaved by any race. This was said by martial god. It was also the most that old man hermit had said to Wang Yu ever since he became a martial arts expert. It was also the goal that martial god had pursued his entire life. As the successor of martial god, although Wang Yu had never met his so-called master, martial god's beliefs had always been imprinted in Wang Yu's heart through hermit. Rebirth was just a game, but to Wang Yu, who loved this game, it was another world. Martial god's pursuit was also Wang Yu's belief. It was also the bottom line for a martial artist to stand in this world. No one was willing to become someone else's slave or fighter. Furthermore, as a martial artist, Wang Yu's self-esteem and self-confidence were carved into his bones and imprinted into his soul. Naturally, he would not be willing to become a slave. Wang Yu would even dare to step on the Lord of Light Luke, let alone a son of the Holy Soul. He would let him know who the master of this world was. Moreover, what kind of game was this? Rebirth. The character of the game designer of Rebirth was obvious to all. How could there be such a thing as a free lunch? Even if there was, there would definitely be poison in the pie. One had to know that Wang Yu was now in the neutral faction. The dark faction and the light faction would not take the initiative to provoke the neutral faction. Even if Wang Yu killed the son of the Holy Soul and the Lord of the Demon Soul, it would still be the dark faction and the light faction that would fight in the end. If Wang Yu joined the light faction now, it would be equivalent to betraying the neutral faction. The powerhouses of the neutral faction were all like wild cranes. Naturally, they would not care about Wang Yu. However, the main cities under Wang Yu's name were all in the neutral faction. Once Wang Yu joined the light faction, the control over the main cities under his name might be taken away by the system. With the shameless style of the game designer, this was definitely not rare. There was no return if there was effort, and there would be no return if there was no effort. This was the purpose of the game. If he joined the light faction, Wang Yu would become the enemy of the dark faction. Xuanjin and his friends in the neutral faction would also be separated from the light faction. Not to mention, based on Wang Yu's daily actions, he would probably be targeted by the light faction if he joined the light faction. After all, the number of famous Protoss bosses that had died by Wang Yu's hands was already in the double digits, including the Lord of Light faction Luke. How could such a rebellious person join the light faction? What a joke. Putting down the butcher's knife and becoming a god was something that could not be done in the Radiant Church. The first creed of the Radiant Church was that those who believed in God would live forever, and those who did not would be sent to the inferno. One could imagine the fate of a god-killer like Wang Yu. Even if Les really wanted to rope in Wang Yu would not be able to jump into this trap. You dare to reject the great Lord Les. Les' smile froze on his face when he saw Wang Yu's choice. A trace of anger and dissatisfaction flashed in his eyes. It was obvious that in Les's heart, a superior like him extending an olive branch to Wang Yu was a great gift. A lowly ant like Wang Yu should be grateful. There was no way he could refuse. Oomph. Wang Yu heard this and said, "The choice is in my hands. Who do you think you are?" Les stood up slowly when he heard Wang Yu's words. He stared at Wang Yu with a serious expression and asked, "Are you sure you want to become an enemy of the gods?" "Huh." Wang Yu waved his hand, and the glove in his hand transformed into a long staff. He struck the ground under Les's feet, sending stone chips flying. He used his actions to tell Les's answer. "Huh." Les laughed loudly and said, "Lowly ant, the great Lord Les gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. Don't blame me, Pooh." Before Les could finish his sentence, Wang Yu thrust the rod in her hand forward and accurately jabbed it into Les's mouth, causing the rest of Les's words to go straight back into his stomach. Motherf asterisk her. Wang Yu used his left pinky to pick his ear. Why does this Protoss boss have so much nonsense to say? If you want to fight, just fight. Can't you be a bit more efficient? Wasn't that right? Wang Yu had already used this move when he was fighting the other two angels. Now that Les was also jabbering, Wang Yu couldn't help but use this mute move that he was unwilling to use. Who knows? Maybe the author wanted to use the word fake. Wuji replied helplessly. He then issued an order in the party channel, beat him to death. Originally, everyone had a problem with Les, who almost fooled him to death. Now that they were being annoyed by this guy's buzzing like a housefly, they already had resentment in their hearts. At this moment, they were ready to take action. Once Wuji gave the order to attack, second brother Een raised his shield and rushed forward. Lowly mortal, accept the judgment of the gods. Wang Yu's mute skill with the staff in his mouth was not the real deal. Apart from interrupting Les's nonsense, its biggest use was to anger Les. Les's body flashed with a golden light, and Wang Yu's staff was forced back. Then, Les roared and crossed his arms in the air. A huge cross flew toward Wang Yu. With Wang Yu's skills, dodging the cross was a piece of cake. However, behind Wang Yu were the members of Quan Jun. This was an attack from a celestial boss. Even if Wang Yu could dodge it, the others might not be able to. If Wang Yu dodged, the people behind him would definitely be hit. At this moment, Wang Yu's second fatty let out a gust of wind. Een Lao Air had already rushed to Wang Yu's side and raised a shield in front of Wang Yu. Duong! The huge cross collided with Een Lao Air's shield, producing a loud sound. Een Lao Air was knocked back a few steps by the huge force. Although Een Lao Air had blocked the skill, Een Lao Air's face was ashen. Damn, this skill directly cleared Een Lao Air's block value, and he almost lost his shield. As expected, a level 100 celestial boss was not something anyone could handle. It was actually so strong. Scram, you ant. A boss like the son of the Holy Spirit had high intelligence. Although the Holy Cross was not an advanced skill for Les, seeing his own attack blocked by an ant like Een Lao Air, Les felt his pride hurt. Een Lao Air was still in a state of shock. Les's right hand was like a knife, and he extended it forward. Golden holy light instantly condensed into a meter-long lightsaber, and he slashed down at Een Lao Air's shield. Een Lao Air had just taken a hit from Les, and his shield's block value had already been cleared. If he took another hit, he would probably be split in half. Chapter 17:30. Holy Light Shield. Boom! With a muffled sound, Een Lao Air was once again pushed back several meters. Due to the effects of the Holy Light Shield, Een Lao Air did not suffer any damage. However, when the Holy Light Shield on Een Lao Air came into contact with Les's Sword of Light, it actually turned into a ray of light and was absorbed by Les's Sword of Light. At the same time, Les's body flashed with a golden light, and he was enveloped by the Holy Light Shield. F***CK. Seeing this scene, everyone from Quan Jun was dumbfounded. Absorbing skills? Was there such a thing? However, Les laughed mockingly and said, "Ignorant ants, light is God's gift to you. You actually want to use light to resist God. What a joke." As he spoke, Les swung his sword, and a golden sword aura shot out. Psst! The sword aura was extremely domineering, as if it wanted to cut through space. It instantly slashed in front of Een Lao Air. Een Lao Air's reaction was also strange. When the sword aura attacked him, he hurriedly rolled to the left, rolling away from the sword aura's trajectory. However, before Een Lao Air could stabilize his body, the sword aura suddenly turned and strangely drew an arc in the air, flying toward Een Lao Air again. F***CK. Een Lao Air could still tolerate the sword aura from 4 to 5 meters away. After all, his opponent was a god boss. Small tricks, such as releasing battle aura, was not too outrageous. However, the sword aura turning was a little too much. This was already beyond the scope of being powerful, and it was directly labeled as shameless. Seeing how shameless Les's methods were, Een Lao Air felt like he was going to collapse. However, now that he had used up his rolling skill, it was too late to dodge. Moreover, his shield's block value had been emptied. It was not like Een Lao Air had not seen less attack power before, so it was even more impossible to block it. With no other choice, Een Lao Air could only turn his body and put his shield to the side, directly facing less sword aura with his back. A dead person could still revive, but if the shield was broken, there was no meaning in living. Pucci. As soon as Yin Lao Air turned around, less sword aura pierced through Yin Lao Air's back and exited through his chest. Yin Lao Air's HP bar instantly emptied, and his entire body transformed into specks of golden light that flew towards less sword of light. Just like the radiant sacred shield earlier, the golden light Yin Lao Air had turned into was completely absorbed by less sword of light. Buzz! After devouring the golden light that Yin Lao Air had turned into, Les's light sword let out a satisfied cry. Huh! Les roared and stretched out his left hand, transforming into a shining golden shield. Whether it was the style or the shape, it was exactly the same as Yin Lao Air's divine god shield. Lowly human. Looking at the shield in his hand, Les said calmly, "The weapons that God gave you are not meant to be used against God. Mother ***, not to mention Quan Zhen and the others. Even Wang Yu was shocked by Les's methods. This Les seemed to be a little strange. Wang Yu had seen the Radiant God King before. Apart from his disgusting golden light barrier, everything else about him was quite normal. However, compared to the Radiant God King, this son of the Holy Spirit was clearly much more annoying. As a level 100 boss, the son of the Holy Spirit's attack was extremely high. Not only could he insta-kill someone, but he could also absorb the target's equipment and skills. How were they supposed to fight this? If they didn't fight back, they would be stabbed to death. If they fought back, he could even absorb their equipment and skills to strengthen himself. This was insane. Just as Wang Yu and the others were stunned, Wu Ji suddenly revealed a confused expression. What's wrong? Everyone asked in confusion when they saw Wu Ji's expression. Wu Ji looked at Les in astonishment and said in disbelief, "I can't battle resurrect second. Can't battle resurrect?" Hearing Wu Ji's words, Quan Zhen and the others looked at each other and felt a chill down their spines. The so-called battle resurrect was resurrecting from battle. As a team with a priest who knew resurrection, Quan Zhen had never feared death because they knew that even if they died, as long as Wu Ji was still around, he could resurrect them. But now, Wu Ji was telling everyone that they could not be revived. This news made everyone in the Chuanjin sect feel a formless pressure. Ignorant mortals! Les seemed to notice Wu Ji's confusion and smiled proudly. "It's your honor to be a part of the light. Do you think you can snatch the light from the hands of God?" Hearing that, everyone felt a chill down their spines again. The meaning of Les's words was very clear. After being killed by Les, he would absorb their power. They didn't know how long this power could last, but during this time, the players whose power was absorbed would lose their autonomy. They wouldn't even have the right to resurrect. What kind of monster was this? "Old cow, your plot is a little difficult." Thinking of this, everyone complained, "Old cow, did you offend the game designer? Why is he targeting you like this?" Everyone was an expert. They had done so many plot quests, but they had never seen such a difficult monster. Even young Master Hua of Beijing, who also had a hidden profession, only had a two-way quest of guarding the church. Wang Yu's quest was clearly to send Wang Yu to his death. This was only the son of the Holy Spirit. There was still the Lord of the Demon Soul. Just from the name, it was obvious that he was even more abnormal than this guy in front of them. Even the usually calm Wu Ji was speechless. "If we get wiped out this time, Old Cow must give us mental compensation." The commander of a team was the core pillar of team. The commander's attitude directly affected the mentality of the players. Those who knew Wu Ji knew that no matter how big a disadvantage Wu Ji faced, he would be able to command the battle calmly and confidently. This kind of strong confidence often gave people a very solid feeling, like invisible encouragement. But now that Wu Ji said that they would get wiped out, it was obvious that Wu Ji had no confidence in the boss in front of them. After all, it was a level 100 god tier boss. With a level suppression of nearly 40 levels, it wasn't something that could be dealt with by a mere dozen or so players. Even with a powerful person like Wang Yu, the chances were slim. Not to mention, the boss in front of them was a little strange. Just the ability to absorb players was enough to make people's hair stand on end. Merging with data? Just thinking about it gave them goosebumps. It was not an exaggeration to ask for mental compensation. Wiped out. You're thinking too much. Hearing Wuji's words, Wang Yu smiled and said domineeringly, he's not qualified. Don't be stubborn. Wuji's face darkened. This thing can insta-kill us. Second brother isn't here. Who can withstand it? Insta-kill, Wang Yu said calmly. As long as we don't get hit, it'll be fine. This. Chapter 1731. Wuji naturally did not doubt Wang Yu's ability. With Wuji's understanding of Wang Yu dared to say that if the boss encountered him, he would definitely be able to do it. However, this was not the crux of the problem. The Son of the Holy Spirit's absorption ability was too overpowered. Even if Wang Yu could really tank all the monsters without being touched by the Son of the Holy Spirit, everyone was here to fight the boss. They could not avoid touching the boss. Everyone had seen the Son of the Holy Spirit's methods. As long as they touched the golden light on his body, all skills and equipment would be absorbed. If Wang Yu's godly equipment and top-notch skills were absorbed by the Son of the Holy Spirit, everyone could just surrender. Why did even Wuji have to worry about being wiped? It was because of this. He knew how terrifying Wang Yu was. With this absorption ability, the boss was as terrifying as Wang Yu was. He, however, faced with Wuji's worries, not only was Wang Yu not worried, he even laughed and said, Wuji, I didn't expect you to be at a loss. Nonsense. Wuji rolled his eyes and said, when I think about the possibility of the opponent absorbing you, how can I calm down? Don't worry. Wang Yu waved his hand and said, he can't absorb me. Why? Wuji was slightly stunned and asked in surprise, do you have some special quest item? No. Wang Yu shook his head and said, didn't you notice? This boss absorbs things related to the light attribute. Hearing Wang Yu say this, Wuji's eyes suddenly lit up. Wasn't that right? From just now until now, the Son of the Holy Spirit had only absorbed 2 skills and equipment. One was his holy light shield. The other was Yin Lao Heir's divine god shield. Needless to say, the holy light shield was a light skill. As for Yin Lao Heir's divine god shield, it was actually a standard weapon for paladins, so it was naturally a light attribute equipment. How did you notice this? Wuji asked Wang Yu in surprise. Wuji was still very confident in his observation ability. He didn't expect Wang Yu to notice something that he didn't notice. Wang Yu smiled and said, nothing else, just game experience. Experience? Wuji smiled disdainfully. I don't believe you. You're just a noob in the game. What experience would you have? If Wang Yu was talking about something else, Wuji would probably do. When it came to game experience, any random kid on the street would have more experience than Wang Yu. Experience from killing a celestial boss. Facing Wuji's doubt, Wang Yu explained seriously, I've killed many light celestial bosses. These guys are all misophobic, so non-light powers are heresy in their eyes. How could this Son of the Holy Spirit absorb other attributes? Hearing Wang Yu's words, Wuji almost vomited blood. He wiped his sweat helplessly and said, all right, you win. How Wang Yu deduced that the Son of the Holy Spirit wouldn't absorb other attributes was no longer important. Just the words experience from killing a celestial boss made Wuji tremble in fear. Damn, looking at the entire game, the only player who could say that killing a celestial boss was as simple as eating and drinking was probably this guy in front of him. Most people really didn't have this kind of experience. He couldn't afford to offend him. A pervert's worldview was indeed different from a normal person's. Ignorant worm, surrender to the glory of God. Just as Wang Yu and Wuji were chatting, Les had already mastered the use of the shield in his hand. He shouted loudly, raised his shield, and rushed in the direction of Chuanjin's team. There were only 2 warriors in Chuanjin's team. Now that Yin Lao Heir had been sacrificed, Bao San naturally had to shoulder the responsibility of the tank. Seeing Les rushing over, Bao San grabbed his greatsword and was about to meet him. Come back. Seeing this, Wuji hurriedly stopped him. Stand at the back. Brother Chun, take over. What a joke. Bao San's celestial sword and Yin Lao Air's celestial shield were set. Wouldn't Bao San be giving less equipment if he took over? Although he didn't know what Wuji was up to, Wuji was still very calm as the commander-in-chief. Receiving Wuji's order, Bao San stopped in his tracks unwillingly. He turned around and walked to the back of the team. At the same time, Chun Xiang, who had received Wuji's order, waved his magic staff. 10 evil spirits drilled out of the ground and roared as they blocked in front of Les. Bang! With a muffled sound, Les's shield collided with the evil spirit at the front. A golden light flashed and purified the evil spirit on the spot. Then, Les waved the lightsaber in his hand and slashed horizontally. Another 3 evil spirits were killed on the spot. As expected, just as Wang Yu had said, the followers of the God of Light could not tolerate heretics. Chun Xiang's summoning technique was dark magic. Therefore, the evil spirits killed by Les did not turn into holy light and disappear like Yin Lao air. Instead, they turned into a cloud of black fog and were evaporated by the blazing holy light. After killing 4 evil spirits in one go, Les proudly held his lightsaber horizontally and said with a pious expression, "Dirty black magic will have nowhere to hide under the glory of God." Kaboom! As soon as Les finished speaking, there was a loud noise. A black circle appeared under his feet. Chun Xiang's dark barrier broke out of the ground. Although the dark barrier's controllability was strong, its activation speed was a little slow. As a level 100 boss, of course, Les would not be so easily controlled. Oomph! Seeing the circle under his feet, Les snorted coldly and jumped back lightly, jumping out of the dark barrier's range. At the same time, he did not forget to taunt, "You want to use dirty magic that's not even worth mentioning, Duong." In the end, before Les could finish speaking, a flash of lightning flashed. Wang Yu appeared behind Les out of nowhere and stepped on the back of Les's head. Ouch! This kick from Wang Yu was very powerful and had a powerful repelling effect. Caught off guard, Les only felt a huge force coming from behind his head. He could not help but stumble and crash into Chun Xiang's dark barrier. Clang! After crashing into the dark barrier, Les was frozen on the spot. After Thunder Stomp hit Les, Wang Yu did not stop. Instead, he leaped into the air and followed closely behind. He bent his knee and hit the back of Les's head with a flying knee. Duong! The powerful impact of the flying knee smashed Les's face into the dark barrier. Les, who was already frozen, was immediately stunned by Wang Yu. However, the higher the level of the target, the higher the resistance against control. Les had a level suppression of more than 30 levels. Moreover, he was a god-tier boss. Although Wang Yu and Chun Xiang's control was strong, it was not worth mentioning in front of Les. Chapter 1732. Wang Yu's reaction was swift. Seeing that Les had broken free from his restraints so quickly and launched a counterattack, Wang Yu lowered his upper body center of gravity and raised his lower body, his body forming a 1 in the air. Les's lightsaber was parallel to Wang Yu in the air, brushing past Wang Yu's chest as it stabbed forward. Les was startled by the stab. With a twist of his wrist, his lightsaber quickly slashed upwards towards Wang Yu. This slash was truly vicious. If it landed, Wang Yu would definitely be cut in half. In the blink of an eye, the moment Les raised his light sword, Wang Yu pushed out with his palms. A huge energy wave flew out from his hands and headed straight for Les's face. Using the recoil, Wang Yu did a backflip to increase the distance between him and Les, barely dodging Les's attack. As a celestial boss, Les's skills were not simple. Before Wang Yu's energy wave could reach Les's face, Les raised his left hand and protected himself with his shield. Bang! A muffled sound. Wang Yu's energy wave smashed onto Les's shield and turned into specks of light. Les also stopped in place because of this block. It was only a short exchange, but Wang Yu instantly realized how terrifying this guy in front of him was. Yang Na, who was in the back row, looked at Wang Yu and Les. She was even more dumbfounded, unable to speak in amazement. Amateurs watched the show, while experts see the artistry. In the eyes of Chuanjin and the others, Wang Yu and the boss had only exchanged one round of blows and canceled out each other's attacks. This was considered basic for the crazy Wang Yu. However, Yang Na, who was also a martial arts practitioner, could see it clearly. Fortunately, this was a game. Skills had various special effects that allowed Wang Yu to perform even more amazing moves. If this was in real life, there was no such thing as energy wave borrowing. This move that Wang Yu was using now could be considered as risking his life. What did it mean to trade lives for lives? It was either you die or I live, and there was a possibility that both of them would perish together. One's head would be smashed, and the other's chest would be split open. It could be said to be extremely dangerous, and it was definitely a forbidden technique. It was unexpected that Wang Yu could use such a ruthless move so decisively in this situation. It could be seen that killing skills like Kung Fu were no longer skills for Wang Yu, but instincts. The word Kung Fu was deeply engraved in Wang Yu's body and soul. His instinctive reaction allowed him to use the most appalling moves in any situation. This was the legendary supreme realm of being able to do as one wished. For Les to be able to force Wang Yu to use such a move, it could be seen that this level 100 God-tier boss was not just for show. This person and monster were clearly evenly matched opponents. Of course, this was also fortunate that Les was a highly intelligent boss. His fighting style was no different from a real-life creature. If it was a normal boss with no intelligence, it would not have raised its shield in this situation. It would have definitely taken Wang Yu's attack head-on and chased after Wang Yu to give it a ruthless blow. "You mortal heretic, I can't let you live today." After missing 2 consecutive attacks and almost getting his head blown off by Wang Yu's energy wave, Les's originally arrogant expression was replaced by a solemn one. He even skipped the catchphrases like lowly and ignorant. It was not difficult to see that Wang Yu's 2 attacks had put a lot of mental pressure on Les. While Les was spouting nonsense, his hands weren't idle. He swung his left hand forward, and the shield in his hand flew out horizontally. Like a huge door, it smashed towards Wang Yu, who was right in front of him. As the shield left his hand, Les retracted his wings, gripped his lightsaber with both hands, and turned into a streak of light as he charged towards Wang Yu. Although Les was not an agility boss, the agility attribute of a level 100 God-tier boss was not to be underestimated. In the blink of an eye, Les and his shield flew in front of Wang Yu. The shield and sword landed on Wang Yu's body at the same time. Bang! Wang Yu, who was hit, suddenly exploded. At this time, Wang Yu's figure appeared on Les's left side, and his right hand stabbed forward like a knife, ruthlessly stabbing into Les's temple. Les swayed slightly from the hit. His left hand pulled the shield that was suspended in midair and slashed horizontally at Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu leaned back, his body parallel to the ground, and dodged Les's shield attack with an iron bridge skill. At this time, the lightsaber in Les's right hand also arrived, stabbing diagonally from top to bottom, stabbing towards Wang Yu's face. Seeing this, Wang Yu's pupil shrank, and he rolled backwards, dodging Les's lightsaber in the nick of time. However, Les's combat level was extremely high. Seeing Wang Yu roll, he did not wait for his skill to be used, and suddenly pressed down with his right hand. Boom! Les's lightsaber was stabbed into the ground, and at the same time, a crack appeared in the ground. Huh! Hearing Les's shout, the crack in the ground suddenly spread towards Wang Yu's direction. Just as Wang Yu finished releasing his rolling skill, the crack spread to Wang Yu's feet. Almost at the same time, Les also rushed towards Wang Yu with a shield in one hand and a lightsaber in the other, raising his hand to stab. In a moment of desperation, Wang Yu used another roll to open up some distance between him and Les. Without waiting for the roll to finish, Wang Yu canceled the skill and slammed his hands on the ground, sending his entire body flying several meters horizontally. He landed on the ground sideways, and only then did he manage to avoid Les's pursuit. Seeing this scene, the Chuanjin people were immediately stunned. As Wang Yu's teammates, no one understood Wang Yu's strength better than the Chuanjin people. However, the more they understood Wang Yu's strength, the more they understood how unfathomable Wang Yu was. Over time, Wang Yu had become synonymous with invincibility in the eyes of the Chuanjian people. To the Chuanjian people, Wang Yu's strength was not only a superstition, but also a kind of faith. But today, it was the first time the Chuanjian people saw Wang Yu being beaten up so badly. Seeing Wang Yu rolling on the ground after being beaten up by less, everyone could not help but sigh. Damn, so this guy also has a limit. For some reason, seeing Wang Yu being chased and beaten up by less, the Chuanjian people were not worried for Wang Yu, but were instead secretly happy. It seemed that the Chuanjian people had been living under Wang Yu's shadow, and they had already instinctively treated Wang Yu as an imaginary enemy. Now that they saw Wang Yu meet his match, everyone inevitably felt relieved. Actually, from a technical point of view, Wang Yu was facing a war god boss under a situation where he was suppressed by more than 30 levels. It was clear that his combat level was much higher than less. Chapter 1733. The fact that Wang Yu could hold out for so long with such a huge difference in strength was already very terrifying. A normal person wouldn't last as long as Wang Yu against a level 100 common boss, let alone a celestial boss. Moreover, Wang Yu wasn't injured at all. Look at your grandpas. Wang Yu grew anxious when he saw that Xuanzhen's group of bastards weren't helping him and were even making sarcastic remarks. As he dodged Les's attack, he shouted, "Hurry up and help me. If I can't hold him off, you'll die with me. Big brother, stop messing around." Hearing Wang Yu's words, Xuanzhen's group was also helpless. "You're already in such a sorry state. What can we do to help?" Xuanzhen's group was well aware of how powerful Wang Yu was. The fact that Les could beat Wang Yu to such a state meant that his strength was obvious to all. The current state of these two was like a fight between deities. No matter how strong Xuanzhen's group was, they were still mortals. How could they interfere in a fight between deities? They might even become a burden to Wang Yu. Wang Yu naturally understood Xuanzhen's group's helplessness. However, in this situation, if they helped, they might die. If they didn't help, they would definitely die. Wang Yu thought for a moment and said, "I don't care what you can do to help, as long as you don't hit me." It had to be said that this was already the lowest requirement for help. After a few exchanges, Wang Yu had a rough estimate of his opponent's strength. Although Les's combat techniques were shallow, under the absolute suppression of his attributes, Wang Yu could only barely dodge and parry. If he was the slightest bit careless, he could be killed in one hit, not to mention counterattacking. However, Wang Yu was also very confident in his own abilities. In this current situation, although he couldn't deal with Les, it wouldn't be easy for Les to deal with him either. The stalemate between the two was like a scale of equal weight. Only a few weights were needed to break this balance, and Xuanzhen's group was the weights that could break this balance. Thus, the Xuanzhen cultivators could attack as much as they wanted. As long as they didn't make things worse, everyone would have a chance of survival. Wang Yu was very confident in Xuanzhen's group. Although Xuanzhen's group wasn't as monstrous as Wang Yu, they were still top-tier experts. Naturally, they wouldn't be as clumsy as noobs who couldn't even hit their targets. The request had already been lowered to this extent. If the people from Xuanzhen still couldn't help, then they might as well not call themselves experts. Of course, if Wang Yu activated his status, he could still defeat Les. However, status skills had a time limit. Les was a celestial boss, and he had a lot of health bar. It was unrealistic to think that he could kill Les in minutes. If Wang Yu activated his status, it would be the same as throwing a bomb at Fight the Landlord. So, at this time, he still had to rely on the help of Quan Zhun. F***CK, you're looking down on us. Hearing Wang Yu's words, the people from Quan Zhun raised their middle fingers at Wang Yu. Meow, we're experts, after all. Saying such words is simply hurting our self-esteem. You're really not treating us as humans. Needless to say, Wang Yu's casual words had an unexpected effect. Panicked by Wang Yu, the fighting spirit of the people from Quan Zhun, who were originally a little afraid of Les, was instantly ignited. Evil creature, don't you dare be so arrogant. In his anger, Chun Xiang roared. No one knew whether he was cursing Wang Yu or less. As he spoke, he raised his staff and slashed at the ground at both Wang Yu and Les. At the same time, green light flashed under Wang Yu and Les's feet. Vines broke out of the ground and swept toward Les. As Chun Xiang's teammate, Wang Yu had immunity to damage. Naturally, he didn't need to care about the vines under his feet. However, Les's feet sank and the vines on the ground wrapped around his ankles. Les was also very fierce. After he was entangled by the vines, he slashed the ground with the light sword in his hand. Slash! With an ear-piercing sound, the vines on the ground were all cut by Les's sword. Chun Xiang's control skill didn't even last for a second before Les used his strength to forcefully break it. However, Les seemed to have forgotten who his opponent was. In less than a second, ordinary people would not be able to do much. However, for a great expert like Wang Yu, who could make use of every opportunity, it was more than enough. Just as Les swung his sword to cut the vines on the ground, Wang Yu seized the opportunity and suddenly took a step forward, appearing in front of Les. His right hand reached forward and grabbed Les's throat. His right foot stepped on Les's foot, and he pushed back with both hands. The huge force pushed Les back, and he staggered and almost fell. Without waiting for Les to react, Wang Yu followed up with both fists, launching a tyrannical chain punch at Les's face. -94445-97454-1 12145 is a skill that was on par with Double Dragon Burst. Tyrannical Chain Punch didn't have any control effects, but its damage output was quite high. The consecutive punches smashed down, dealing nearly 300,000 damage. However, because it didn't have a control effect, Tyrannical Chain Punch's attack was strong, but its priority wasn't too high. Control skills couldn't hold Les for long, and low-priority skills naturally couldn't hold him down. Tyrannical Chain Punch had a total of 7 heavy punches. Before Wang Yu could finish the last 4 punches, Les had already steadied himself. He didn't care about Wang Yu's heavy punches and fiercely smashed the shield in his hand. Bang! The shield blocked the Tyrannical Chain Punch and smashed into Wang Yu's face. Wang Yu's shield shattered. Seeing this, Les looked up and saw that Wang Yu had already appeared 3 meters away from him. Damn! Les's expression darkened. He raised his sword and was about to attack Wang Yu again. Bang! At this time, the air behind Les twisted. North Sea Fish jumped out from behind Les, the dagger in her hand heavily stabbing into the back of Les's head. Wong! Les only felt a buzzing sound at his head. A mosquito coil floated above his head. Of course, even a main controller like Chun Xiang couldn't control Les for a second. North Sea Fish, a damage output expert, naturally wouldn't have much of a control effect. A golden light flashed on Les's body, and the stunned state was lifted. Les flipped the lightsaber in his hand, and without a word, he swung it horizontally behind him. Les's fighting style fully demonstrated what it meant to be simple and crude. This bastard didn't even know the position of Northern Darksea Fish behind him, nor did he need to know the position of Northern Darksea Fish. He swung his light sword behind him with a 3-meter-long sword energy, and a crescent chi slash flew out horizontally. It didn't matter where he was, this slash was guaranteed to cut anyone behind him in half. Fuck! North Sea Fish was shocked when she saw this. She hurriedly used Earth Escape to narrowly avoid Les's counterattack. Chapter 1734. Seeing this scene, everyone in Xuanjin sucked in a breath of cold air. With this kind of attack power, there was no difference between a tank and a squishy skin in front of Les. In any case, it was just a matter of time. Fortunately, the person tanking the boss was Wang Yu. If it were anyone else, they would have been killed by Les one by one. Les once again revealed an opening when he swung his sword to attack. Take this! Wang Yu bellowed and rushed forward to meet him head-on. Hearing Wang Yu shout, Les had an idea. He subconsciously raised his arm and raised his shield. At this time, Wang Yu had already rushed to Les' side. He used Thunder Stomp to pass under the shield and kick Les. Boom! A bolt of lightning flashed, and Thunder Stomp landed squarely on Les' ribs. Crack! It was unknown whether it was the sound of ribs breaking or the sound of thunderstomp. After taking the most powerful kick from Wang Yu, even a god-tier boss like Les was knocked back several meters by the effect of thunderstomp. Les took a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. Just as Wang Yu had said, it was not important whether or not he could control Les for a long time. As long as he could cause Les some trouble, he could reduce the pressure on Wang Yu and make an effective counterattack. But soon, there was another problem. After a few rounds, Chuanjin and the others had a rough idea of Les's strength. This guy's attack priority was extremely high, let alone normal attacks. Even a slightly weaker control skill could not affect Les at all. Only control skills such as stun and immobilize could cause Les some trouble. However, it was common knowledge that control skills had long cooldowns. Moreover, the control skills of DPS classes were not very powerful. Chuanjin had more DPS classes, and there were only two main control players. One was Lao Air, and the other was Spring Soar. Now that Lao Air had been absorbed by Les, the only control player left was Spring Soar. Unfortunately, while Soaring Spring's crowd control skills had a long duration against other targets, they were negligible in front of Les. Originally, he could only control a target for 7 or 8 seconds, but now, he couldn't even control a target for a single second. As a result, Soaring Spring's crowd control skills had a hard time respawning, and his follow-up was also insufficient. Although Mingjian Shui, Bao San, and A Place One's Pride also had control skills, even Wang Yu could only parry Les's attacks. Unlike Dark North, Wang Yu and the others did not have Fish or Earth Escape. Hence, if they charged at Les and engaged in melee combat, it would be no different from using a technique. Once North Sea Fish and Spring Source control was finished, Wang Yu once again fell into a bitter struggle. Les steadied himself and swung the lightsaber in his hand, sending a battle aura slash towards Wang Yu. Wang Yu dodged to the side and was about to counterattack, but Les was already 3 meters away from Wang Yu. Activating his Holy Light Combat Aura, the light sword's aura grew by 3 feet and stabbed at Wang Yu. Lower your head. Just as Wang Yu thought he was going to be stuck in a stalemate with Les, a clear voice suddenly rang in his ears. Eh. Before the voice faded, Wang Yu heard the sound of wind behind him, and his body reflexively bent down. Whoosh! A black arrow brushed past the back of Wang Yu's head, flying straight towards Les's face. Ignorant mortal, you know nothing of true power. Les sneered when he saw this, and a lightsaber in his hand moved towards the arrow. Who knew that at this moment, the arrowhead in midair would suddenly change direction, and Les's lightsaber would fall to the ground before it could even reach it. Les looked blankly at the arrow on the ground, and immediately flew into a rage. Ignorant ant, how dare you toy with a great god? Damn it, even someone of this level dared to make a move against him. Where was the dignity of God? With a roar, Les rushed forward to purify that detestable god insulter. But as soon as he moved, Les's feet sank, and his upper body involuntarily fell to the ground. Fortunately, Les was nimble, or else he would have fallen flat on his face. That arrow just now was none other than Exquisite Dream's Shadowbind arrow. Why was Exquisite Dream, who was weaker than even famous Sword Dao Xue, so important in Chuanjin? It was because of this skill that Exquisite Dream had a place in the crowd control aspect. The Shadowbind arrow's crowd control skill only lasted for a short 2 seconds, but in front of Les, its effect was no different from Spring Source Dark Barrier, lasting less than a second moreover. The Shadowbind arrow's cooldown was very short, and it didn't have a skill before it. With the same effect, it was much more convenient than Spring Source crowd control. After Les fell to the ground, his body flashed with a golden light, and the crowd control effect was removed. At this time, Wang Yu jumped above Les and used Eagle Stamp on his head. Pung pung pung. Les endured Wang Yu's attack and stood up. Just as he was about to counterattack Wang Yu, whoosh! Another arrow pierced through the air, landing at Les's feet. Wang Yu landed, turned around, and elbowed Les's temple, causing a damage value to rise up. Exquisite Dream raised her crossbow, took aim, and pulled the trigger. Whoosh! Another arrow flew out, flying towards Les. As a god-tier boss, Les's battle AI was quite high. He quickly realized that this arrow couldn't hit him. Seeing another arrow flying towards him, he raised his longsword, trying to shoot it down before it hit him. But before the sword could reach him, the arrow actually fell first, hitting the ground. Les was once again frozen on the spot. Little did he know that the shadow-bind arrow's timing depended on the size of the target shadow. The bigger the shadow, the earlier the arrow would fall. Les raised his sword, and the shadow grew longer. Of course, Exquisite Dream's arrow would also fall earlier. It wasn't difficult to deal with this skill. As long as the shadow was within a certain range, it would be fine. Of course, Les wasn't Wang Yu, so he naturally didn't realize this. Even if he did, it was already too late. With Exquisite Dream's continuous control, the balance finally tipped in Wang Yu's favor. Not only did Wang Yu firmly pull Les's aggro, but he also had the ability to counterattack. Very quickly, he went from being passively attacked to actively pinning Les down. When the other members of Chuanjin saw that Wang Yu and Exquisite Dream had firmly pinned down Les, they naturally didn't stay idle. They threw their skills and magic at Les as if they didn't cost anything. The players of Chuanjin were all wearing top-tier equipment. Although their damage wasn't as high as Wang Yu and Mingdu's, it was still quite terrifying. Under the control of a dozen or so players, Les's health bar slowly dropped at a rate visible to the naked eye. Chapter 1735. Phew. The white light was a sign that he was dead. Seeing that Les had finally turned into a streak of white light, everyone let out a long sigh of relief. F***, I'm so tired, especially Exquisite Dream. Seeing that Les had died, her expression relaxed, and she sat on the ground, wiping away her sweat as she cursed. After this battle, I feel like I've been violated by dozens of men. Old cow, you'll have to do as you see fit. Exquisite Dream's words were still as bold as ever. The Chuanjin players were speechless, but they understood Exquisite Dream's feelings. Damn, the battle just now seemed like a close call, but only those who had experienced it would know how dangerous it was. After all, the opponent's rank was too high, and the damage he dealt was even more shocking. Just a touch was enough to spell certain death. In such a situation, there was zero room for mistakes. Against a celestial boss, they had to make a move, or else the boss would take the hit. Such a requirement was ridiculous. Even a top-tier expert like Wang Yu would not be able to do it so easily, let alone Exquisite Dream, who was the main controller in the backline. If there had been a single mistake in the battle just now, Wang Yu could have been killed in one hit. Without Wang Yu tanking, the rest of the Chuanjin players would not have been able to withstand less attacks. Thus, Exquisite Dream had been extremely tense throughout the entire battle, afraid that she would drop the ball at a crucial moment. Wang Yu was a martial artist. Focusing on a battle for a short period of time was as common as eating and drinking for Wang Yu, but for a normal person like Exquisite Dream, it was a huge burden. For example, when an author played League of Legends, he was not willing to play the AD position. That was because it was too much of a waste of energy, and it was easy to get tired as one got older. Fortunately, this was a game, so there was no need to use physical strength. Otherwise, with Exquisite Dream's physique, she would have collapsed after a battle. Hee. Thank you, Sister Dream. Wang Yu did not dare to take Exquisite Meng's words head-on. When he heard Exquisite Meng's words, he quickly chuckled and changed the topic. After this matter is settled, I will definitely reward you handsomely. Don't talk about useless things. I'm only interested in one thing, Linglong Meng said. Having said that, Exquisite Meng gave a charming smile and raised her eyebrows as she looked at Wang Yu. Thump! When Wang Yu saw this, he was shocked and quickly waved his hand. Sister Meng, you can't. We are a good family. There were too many female gangsters in today's society. Boys had to pay attention to protect themselves when they were outside. Pooh! Before Wang Yu could finish, Exquisite Dream spat at Wang Yu and said, I'm talking about your bow. This. Wang Yu turned around and looked at the bow on his back. He picked it up and said, I thought it was something important, but this thing is bound to me. Otherwise, I'll lend it to you for 2 days. TSK. Exquisite Dream rolled her eyes and said, You've learned bad things from those bastards from the Chuanjin sect. You only know how to play around. Since I put in so much effort, why don't you let me take the loot first when the boss drops? Of course, of course. Wang Yu nodded and said, Let me see what it drops first. As he said that, Wang Yu walked a few steps forward and lowered his head to look at the spot where Les had disappeared. Huh? After looking back and forth a few times, Wang Yu could not find anything on the ground. He could not help but be confused. Les was a Protoss, a celestial boss, and a first kill. He should have dropped something. Why was there nothing on the ground? Could it be? Yeah. Just as Wang Yu was looking at the ground with a dumbfounded expression, a strong gust of wind suddenly blew over. Wang Yu felt a powerful aura in front of him. Then, a golden light burst forth from the place where Les had disappeared. Old cow. Not good. Retreat. At the same time, the people from Chuanjin behind Wang Yu hurriedly shouted to warn Wang Yu. Wang Yu did not even raise his head. He jumped back a few times, distancing himself from the golden light. Ignorant mortal! At this time, Wang Yu heard a familiar voice that deserved a beating. The golden light dissipated, and Les appeared in front of Wang Yu again. Not only was he unscathed, but even the health bar on his head had recovered. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. It took so many chapters to kill this bastard, but this bastard actually came back to life. In fact, everyone could accept the fact that Protoss bosses could revive. However, this Les Mingmingdu had turned into a white light and disappeared. How could he revive? This did not make sense at all. Ha ha ha. Seeing the stunned expressions on the faces of Wang Yu and the others, Les laughed proudly. Do you think you have the ability to fight against God? God is immortal. As long as there is light, I can live forever. Worms, you have completely angered me. Take my anger with you to hell. Before he finished speaking, Les leaped up and rushed in front of Wang Yu. The sword of light in his hand slashed down at Wang Yu. Les was extremely fast. It was too late for Wang Yu to dodge. As he had been arguing with Exquisite Dream, Wang Yu had held his bow in his hand. In this situation, he did not have the time to switch to boxing gloves. He could only raise the longbow in his hands. Clang! There was a clear sound of metal colliding. Les's sword of light landed squarely on Wang Yu's longbow. Wang Yu had seen Les's strength before. He knew that this guy was extremely strong. Even if he successfully blocked, if he did not divert the force, he would probably die from the impact. Thus, the moment he successfully blocked the attack, Wang Yu instinctively tried to divert the force. However, what Wang Yu did not expect was that the black longbow in Wang Yu's hands flashed with a dark light. The sword of light in Les's hands disappeared without a trace like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no way he could divert it. Thud! His weapon suddenly disappeared. Les could not retract his force in time and fell to the ground. Wang Yu took the chance to retreat and widened the distance between him and Les again. Meanwhile, the gazes of the people from Chuanjin were instantly attracted by the longbow in Wang Yu's hands. Their faces were filled with expressions of, oh my God. Even something as memorable as Reese eating sh*t was selectively ignored by everyone. The shock on Wang Yu's face was no less than that of the people from Chuanjin. He never thought that this ordinary-looking lousy Bao would actually have such a terrifying ability. The boss that they had fought for so long before finally killing after so much difficulty had suffered a great loss because of this Bao. This was F***king ridiculous. Wang Yu and the others were both happy and angry. Their emotions were complicated. They were happy because this Bao was clearly the key to defeating Les. They were angry because Wang Yu had this item, but he had only taken it out now. What the hell? Chapter 1736. I don't know. In all honesty, Wang Yu was not the kind of person who liked to waste his energy. If he had known that this Bao had such an effect, he would not have let everyone waste so much effort. Where did you get the blueprint for this Bao? Wuji asked after some thought. I got it from the previous storyline quest. Even the 4 gems used to forge the bow were obtained from the previous storyline quest, Wang Yu said honestly. No wonder. After hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone seemed to understand. They were all old foxes in the online gaming world, so they naturally knew the various connections between storyline quests. Since this bow was closely related to the previous storyline quest, it was obvious that the bow in Wang Yu's hands was the most important item for this storyline quest. No wonder Wang Yu's storyline quests were so different from normal people's. It was so difficult that it made one's hair stand on end. This idiot did not even take out the quest item before forcefully pushing it forward. What was even more unbelievable was that he had almost succeeded by forcefully pushing it forward. As expected, newbies were all monsters. While the Chuanjin members were studying the bow in Wang Yu's hands, Les also climbed up from the ground. He looked at the bow in Wang Yu's hands with a somewhat fearful expression and asked in horror, "What is this?" This, Wang Yu glanced at the equipment's attributes and said, "This is called the God-slaying, demon-destroying bow." God-slaying? How arrogant. Les's expression changed drastically when he heard this. He opened the fingers of his right hand, and a dazzling holy light condensed into a sword of light. He swung the sword of light, and 2 sword auras formed across and shot toward Wang Yu. Wang Yu calmly pushed back, holding the bow in his left hand and grabbing at the quiver on his back with his right hand. He pulled out a huge arrow as thick as a forearm and over 2 meters long. Draw the bow. Knock the arrow. Pull the bowstring. Creak. The bow was like a full moon. Release the bowstring. Pung. Following the explosive sound of the bowstring, Wang Yu's arrow drew a ray of light and flew towards the sword chi, accurately colliding with the cross-shaped sword chi. Just like before, the moment the holy light sword chi came into contact with the arrow, it was instantly absorbed by the arrow. There was not even the slightest obstruction, and in the next moment, it pierced through Les' chest. Poochie! The arrow pierced through Leaf and landed on the throne behind him. More than half of the arrow was embedded in the throne, and the feathers at the end of the arrow swayed slightly, as if showing off its unparalleled power. As for Les, he had a fist-sized wound on his chest after being pierced by an arrow. The HP bar above Les' head dropped by 1/10. The power of this arrow was actually so strong. Lowering his head and looking at the wound on his chest, Les completely panicked. He pointed at Wang Yu in a panic and shouted, "No, impossible. I am a god. I am invincible. You are just a mortal. How can you hurt me? I am God. I represent the light. The light is me. God of light, please bestow me with true power." Les' words seemed to be expressing his unwillingness, but it was more like he was chanting some strange spell. Rip! Following Les's shout, the white battle robe on Les suddenly burst open, revealing his sturdy muscles. In the sky, a melodious hymn rang out once more. The light in the divine temple began to gather from all directions, turning into spots of light that seeped into Les' body. Every time he absorbed a spot of light, Les' muscles would swell up a little. In an instant, the holy light in the temple was completely absorbed by Les, and Les turned from a gentleman into a muscular man, the kind that wore no clothes. As expected of a Western fantasy game, the scene was artistic. In the face of Les's ferocious transformation, Wang Yu did not give Les the respect he deserved like the other members of the Chuanjin sect. Instead, she revealed a shocked expression and subconsciously glanced at Les's crotch, revealing a mocking smile. Wuji was right. Angels did not have gender, and Les had a little hook. Mortal, this is the punishment for your blasphemy. After the transformation, Les squeezed his left hand, and the light shield in his hand was crushed, turning into a ray of holy light that drilled into Les' body. Then, Les put his hands together and raised them above his head, forming a huge cross-shaped holy sword in his hands. "This is troublesome, pull out." Seeing this, Wuji was shocked and hurriedly gave the order to retreat, for the glory of the God of Light. At this time, Les roared, both hands slashing downwards, and the huge cross-shaped holy sword fell down on Wang Yu's head. The range of the cross-shaped holy sword was so large that it covered the entire temple. If the others dodged to the left or right, they might have a chance of survival. But this attack was aimed at Wang Yu, and Wang Yu naturally could not avoid it. Of course, Wang Yu did not think of dodging. Facing the holy sword, Wang Yu stood firmly and raised the god-punishing demon bow in his hand. Boom! With a loud sound, the holy sword smashed into the god-punishing demon bow. Although the god-exterminating demonic bow was the bane of holy light, the holy sword's energy was extremely domineering. As soon as they clashed, Wang Yu felt an earth-shattering force engulfing him. He immediately realized that he couldn't take this attack head-on. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu activated Flash and appeared 5 meters away. Boom! The sword of light fell to the ground and split the entire temple in two. A bottomless ravine appeared on the ground, and the sword chi continued to rush out of the temple, cutting the entire Garden of Eden in half. After appearing in Flash, Wang Yu was 5 meters away from the sword energy. At the same time, he was also protected by the god-punishing demon bow. But even so, he was still affected by the sword energy. Boom! A huge golden eggshell lit up, and Wang Yu's protective barrier was broken by the sword energy. As expected of a god-tier boss, he was only level 100, but he was already so powerful. This guy who was tainted by gods and demons was really not someone to be trifled with. Stubborn ant. The sword slashed down, but it didn't kill Wang Yurex. He narrowed his eyes and raised his hands again. Wang Yu's protective barrier could only be used once. If Lisi were to slash at them again, everyone would probably not even have a corpse left. In a moment of desperation, Wang Yu reached behind him, pulled out an arrow, and knocked it on the bowstring. Draw the bow. Release the bowstring. Bang! With a loud sound, 5 arrows as thick as a forearm shot toward Les. Les knew how powerful Wang Yu's arrows were. Naturally, he would not take them head-on. He bent his arms, protecting his head and chest. Clang! 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 5 arrows landed on Les's arm, producing white rays of light. However, the HP bar above Les's head only dropped by a little. You could do that. Seeing that the arrows did not injure Les, Wang Yu could not help but be surprised. At this moment, he heard Wuji shout, "Swords, old cow, those 2 swords. Hermit gave them to you." Hermit gave them to me? Hearing Wuji's reminder, Wang Yu's eyes lit up, and he pulled out a pitch-black longsword from his pocket. Chapter 1737. Purple-green yin-yang swords. These were the 2 swords that Wang Yu had gotten from Old Man Hermit when he accepted the quest. The red one was called the Purple Sun Sword, and the black one in Wang Yu's hand was called the Cyanine Sword. Les had just said that he could live forever as long as there was light, and this Cyanine Sword was obviously an item that could restrain light. There were no unnecessary clues in the quest in Rebirth. At first, when Wang Yu received these 2 swords, he thought that Old Man Hermit was purposely making things difficult for him, giving him 2 weapons that he could not use. However, with Wuji's reminder, Wang Yu finally realized the correct way to use these swords. He held the bow in his left hand and the sword in his right. Wang Yu was not afraid of the overwhelming pressure that burst forth from Les's body. He stood in front of Les like a mountain. A loud roar. A ray of blue light burst forth from Wang Yu's body. Before the blue light disappeared, another ray of golden light burst forth from Wang Yu's body. Then, a ball of crimson-black flames surrounded Wang Yu. There was even a sound of wind and thunder in the shadows of the flames. Internal energy surged. Activate. Dragon subduing palm. Activate. Burning flame steps. Activate. Wrath of wind and thunder. Activate. It seemed that Wang Yu still had his guard up against Hermit. Afraid that this sword wouldn't be able to kill Les, he directly activated the 4th stage transformation buff. The 4th stage transformation of Wang Yu was Wang Yu's ultimate state. After the transformation, Wang Yu's stats would explosively increase. In a more vulgar way, he would be able to kill gods and Buddhas in his way. His attack power and damage output could only be described as terrifying. One had to know that in all the time that Wang Yu had played this game, He had only used the fourth stage transformation to face one boss head-on, and that was the light god King Luke. As the son of the Holy Spirit, Les could be considered to have died a worthy death. After activating the fourth stage transformation, Wang Yu casually placed the cyan sword on the bowstring. Creak! Wang Yu's arms tightened, and the bow was like a full moon. Bang! With an explosive sound, Wang Yu's inner force was instantly emptied. The green sword turned into a black light and shot towards Les. At the same time, four huge ancient Chinese characters appeared above Wang Yu's head, Heaven's Arrow. While Wang Yu was knocking an arrow, Les did not remain idle. Just like before, he clasped his hands together and raised them above his head, once again condensing the destructive sacred sword of Doomsday. For the glory of holy light. Seeing that Wang Yu's bow was aimed at him, Les bellowed and slashed at Wang Yu with his sacred sword. Before the holy sword could descend, Wang Yu's firmament arrow had already shot out. A ray of light flashed, and the two destructive skills collided. Heaven's Arrow, legendary skill, consumes a piece of dark gold or higher equipment and 100% MP to launch an all-out attack. Its power can pierce through the heavens and earth. The higher the equipment's grade, the stronger the attack. The cyan sword was an epic weapon with a level 100 requirement. Like the god-vanquishing bow, it also had an additional counter to holy light. At this moment, Wang Yu had also activated his fourth stage transformation. With so many attributes stacked together, the power of this arrow was unimaginable. The moment the heavenly arrow's black light touched the sacred sword of Armageddon, it created a terrifying vortex like a black hole. The vortex spun, and the sacred sword of Armageddon was immediately devoured by the black hole. It did not even make a sound. After swallowing the sacred sword of Doomsday, Heaven's Arrow suddenly doubled in size. Its speed also increased, and in the blink of an eye, it stabbed into Les' chest. With a shrill scream, Les' body, which was surrounded by a holy halo, was torn apart. The HP bar on his head instantly hit rock bottom. After tearing Les apart, the black arrow drew a black trajectory and shot into the sky, turning into a black duck. Son of the Holy Soul, Les dead. At this moment, there were no words to describe the feelings of the people in Xuanzhen. A single arrow killing a level 100 celestial boss was not too surprising for the people in Xuanzhen. After all, everyone knew that the bow and sword in Wang Yu's hands were quest items. It was reasonable for him to be able to kill the boss. The main reason why everyone was so shocked was because of the scene just now. Whether it was the sacred sword of Doomsday or Heaven's Arrow, they were skills that players at the current stage of the game could not come into contact with. As players over level 60, being able to witness a battle between the top skills in the game was quite an impressive visual effect. Even the Quanjin members, including Wang Yu, who were used to seeing grand scenes, were shocked by the scene just now. Damn, they thought that players over level 60 would already have completed equipment and skills. However, compared to the two skills just now, it was like children's play. As expected, as the most successful online game so far, Rebirth still had a strong foundation. At this time, the people in Xuanzhen also received a system notification. You have watched the Battle of the Gods and gained some understanding of the celestial skills. It will be easier for you to understand the profound meaning of the gods and break through to the peak of humanity. In the setting of Rebirth, after players reached level 80, they would have to undergo a second awakening, which was the so-called profound meaning of the gods and break through to the peak of humanity. After breaking through, players would enter the demigod realm, where they could feel and understand the celestial skills. So far, all the powerful human NPCs in the game were basically stuck at this level. Only a few people could break through this realm. The NPCs who could break through this realm were all influential figures in the game. Of course, the background story of Rebirth was tens of thousands of years old. There were many people who reached the peak of level 80 and lived for hundreds or even thousands of years, but they still could not break through to the peak. This showed how difficult it was to break through to the peak. After watching the Battle of the Gods and gaining some understanding, the success rate of breaking through to the peak was slightly higher than others. Plop! Just as everyone was still reminiscing about the scene just now, Les's head fell to the ground and automatically folded into a box. System notification. Player Iron Ox has led a party and successfully killed the Holy Soul's son, Les. Light faction reputation -200, light faction honor -1000. Everyone can kill him. The system notification flashed across the sky of Holy Light City. When Eternal Dawn and Beijing's young master Hua saw this, they almost vomited blood. At first, Eternal Dawn was still holding onto a sliver of hope. He thought that no matter how strong Wang Yu was, it would still be quite difficult for a dozen or so people to defeat a level 100 celestial boss. However, who would have thought that Wang Yu would kill the Holy Soul Son Les in such a short time? Eternal Dawn's heart was in a complete mess, scolding him for not being loyal. It was a two-way quest. Although they were friends, he had no obligation to give up the quest. Kill Wang Yu to vent his anger? Stop messing around. A level 100 celestial boss was killed just like that. It was uncertain who would kill who to vent their anger on. This time, Eternal Silence Dawn could only suffer in silence. Just as Eternal Dawn was gritting his teeth in anger, Beijing's young master, Hua, suddenly shouted. Chapter 1738. What's the matter? What with the fuss? Eternal Silence asked in annoyance. Eternal Silent Dawn was feeling depressed. Everyone he looked at was an eyesore. The quest has changed. Hua Xiao shouted excitedly and shared the progress of the quest with Eternal Silent Dawn. Eternal Silence opened it and saw the words, Quest failed. Light faction reputation -50. Light faction honor points -200. Please find Cardinal Taylor as soon as possible to accept the redemption quest. The quest had failed so cleanly that it was reasonable to lose reputation and honor points. However, the last sentence attracted Eternal Silence's attention. Redemption quest. Eternal Silence looked at the quest window excitedly. There's still a chance to redeem this quest. It's a storyline quest, after all. Hua Xiao also said excitedly. I can't be stuck here forever if I fail this quest. That makes sense. Eternal Silence nodded in understanding. If the storyline quest could not be completed, the game would stop. Players who could not complete the quest would naturally have no reason to continue playing. After all, the game was created for people to play. The players were the customers, and the customers were the God of Light, especially for a tycoon class like Hua Xiao from Beijing. Everyone should know how Hua Xiao from Beijing's hidden class came about, so I don't have to repeat myself. The loss of such a character was definitely the biggest loss to the game. The game company would naturally not chase away their customers. It was normal for them to give a redemption quest at this time. With money, one could do whatever they wanted. As a Templar, young Master Hua of Beijing was very familiar with the Cardinal Taylor. After receiving the quest notification, young Master Hua of Beijing and Eternal Silence of Dawn quickly rushed to the church. Just as he arrived at the entrance of the church, he saw Wang Yu and a group of people from the Quanzhun sect walking out of the church. As they walked out, they cursed, F***CK, a god-tier boss? Not even a single thing dropped. Eternal Silence was stunned when he saw Wang Yu and the others. Eternal Dawn really wanted to rush up and punch Wang Yu in the face. Fortunately, he understood Wang Yu's strength, which allowed him to be a bit more rational. Oh my, isn't this Qinxi's boss? Before Eternal Dawn could say anything, Wu Ji, who was standing behind Wang Yu, greeted Eternal Dawn with a smile. Hee, so it's Boss Wu Ji and Iron Ox. Eternal Silent Dawn was also very gentlemanly. Seeing that Wu Ji was greeting him, he did not lose his composure. Of course, it was mainly because he did not dare to. Wang Yu was a person who cared about his reputation. Seeing Eternal Silence's expression as if he had eaten a fly, he could not help but smile guiltily. Dawn boss, you failed the mission. Why are you still here? Wu Ji was also a despicable person. Eternal Silence Dawn was already in such a state, but Wuji still came over and asked curiously. This was clearly a provocation. I'll endure it. Eternal Silence looked deeply at Wang Yu and suppressed his anger. Boss Wuji is really good. I'm willing to admit defeat. We're here to receive our punishment. Once bitten, twice shy. Eternal Silence naturally would not tell the truth to Wuji since he had been tricked so badly by Wuji. I see. Wuji nodded with a smile. Since you're here to receive your punishment, we won't join in the fun. Go ahead. Saying that, Wuji waved his hand, signaling the Chuanjin people who were blocking the entrance to the church to make way for Eternal Silence. Eternal Silence was furious. He'd been in Holy Light City for so long, but this was the first time he was blocked by someone. Moreover, the person blocking his way was an outsider. Although he was angry, his life was still more important. Eternal Silence glared at Wuji and entered the church with young Master Hua. Old Yu, follow them and take a look. Looking at the departing figures of Eternal Silence and Light of Dawn, Wuji waved at Baiming Yuyu and gave her an order in the party channel. Okay. Baiming Yuyu nodded and disappeared into thin air. What's the meaning of this? Wang Yu asked, puzzled. Nothing. Wuji laughed. That grandson definitely didn't tell me the truth. Nonsense. Wang Yu curled his lips. He's not stupid. That's why I asked old Yu to follow them and take a look. Wuji said, I suspect that they definitely have follow-up missions. If they do, then so be it. Wang Yu is speechless. What does it have to do with us? We can't always be watching them and causing trouble. After all, they were friends. Wang Yu could not bear to see Eternal Silence of Dawn die. Who can say for sure? Wuji waved his hand and said, based on the system's character, their follow-up missions are most likely the same as ours. We'd better be cautious. Under Wuji's instructions, Baiming Yuyu followed Eternal Silence and Dawn into the church. After passing through the main hall, the two quickly arrived at the hall behind the church. Inside the hall, an old man in red was kneeling in front of the holy statue of light and praying. Sensing that someone had entered the hall, the old man in red stood up and turned around. Esteemed Lord Taylor. After seeing the old man, Beijing's Hua Xiao respectfully bowed to him. You're here. Taylor nodded his head in satisfaction and said calmly. To be honest, I'm very dissatisfied with this mission. As the servants of the divine light God, you should ensure the safety of the Holy Soul's children. I'm sorry, Lord Taylor. Beijing's Hua Xiao said guiltily. Don't be nervous, my child. Taylor smiled kindly and said, the fall of Sir Les was the will of my Lord. The great divine light God has always been kind to the children of light. We'll let this matter pass. Thank you, Lord Divine Light God, for your kindness. Beijing's Hua Xiao recited his lines step by step. But my child, before Beijing's Hua Xiao finished speaking, Taylor quickly changed the topic. The Star of Extinction opened the entrance to the demon world and the human world. The light is destined to defeat the darkness and save the world. Now that Sir Les has fallen, the scales of fate have tilted towards the darkness. I hope you can take up the responsibility of saving this world. Here it came, the mission came. Saving the world, it sounded so high and mighty. Please guide me, Lord Taylor. Beijing's Hua Xiao heard this and quickly climbed up the pole. I admire your attitude, child. Taylor nodded his head in satisfaction. The scales of fate have tilted. I hope you can make the scales of fate return a balance. Please guide me, divine light God. Beijing's Hua Xiao continued to ask. The Lord of the Demon Soul has already descended in Darkness City. As long as he is not here, the scales of fate and the order of the human world will return to stability. Taylor said. At the same time, Beijing's Hua Xiao received a mission notification. Chapter 1739. F***CKU. Seeing the system prompt, Hua Xiao and Eternal Dawn almost cursed it out loud on the spot. These two were not fools. Of course, they understood what the old faker meant. This old bastard spouted so much nonsense, but there was only one thing he was trying to say. Even if my boss dies, I won't let the other side have it easy. Since you've screwed up, you should go kill the other side's boss. 1-for-1, no one would lose out. The Lord of the Demon Soul, just from the name, it was obvious that he was on the same level as the Son of the Holy Spirit. That was a level 100 god boss. In front of such a strong guy, even Eternal Dawn, who had thousands of subordinates, felt guilty. What was the concept of level 100? The Cardinal Tailor in front of him was only a level 80 epic boss. At this level, he could kill the current players with a wave of his hand. One could imagine the power of a level 100 god boss. Everyone here was a normal person, not a pervert like Wang Yu. Against the Lord of the Demon Soul, how could they possibly survive? This, Hua Xiao was also very cunning. Seeing the system prompt, he thought for a while and said, "Sir Tailor, our strength is too low. The responsibility of saving the earth and maintaining world peace is too great. I'm afraid I can't bear it." "It's okay." Taylor smiled kindly and said, "God has always been tolerant towards his people. Since you can't bear the responsibility, then let's talk about Sir Lewis." "What the F***CK?" Hua Xiao spat out a mouthful of blood when Taylor said this. Well, the older the ginger, the spicier. The meaning of this old faker's words was very clear. If you don't accept the mission, then you'll be punished. The Son of the Holy Spirit obviously had a high status in the Light faction. With this punishment, wouldn't Hua Xiao be back to square one overnight? Just as Hua Xiao was about to collapse, Taylor continued, "As the most loyal guard of God, you should have the responsibility of God. If you can't even do such a small thing, I don't think there's a need for you to be a Templar." "Sir Taylor." Hua Xiao's soul almost jumped out of his body when Taylor said this. He quickly said, "The rise and fall of the world is everyone's responsibility. I've had the dream of being a superhero since I was young. I've been saving the world for more than 20 years without stopping. I'll accept this mission." As he spoke, Hua Xiao clicked confirm. What a joke. Even if the faction's reputation and honor points were gone, everyone could still farm them again. After all, Hua Xiao had so many subordinates under him. It was not difficult to farm reputation and honor points by completing quests. However, if this hidden profession was taken back, then what was the point of playing? The Templar class was donated by Hua Xiao of the capital at a high price. Hua Xiao of the capital was relying on this class to survive in Holy Light City. If it was taken away by the system, there would be no point in playing the game. Although the game company was also afraid of losing players, the game company also understood the mentality of the players. They were addicted to the game, and as long as there was a chance of survival, no one would take the initiative to drag it down. However, when young Master Hua confirmed this point, he almost spat out another mouthful of blood. System notice. Accepting the quest requires 5,000 gold coins. Do you wish to pay? This requires money. Beijing's young Master Hua's mentality had completely collapsed. He never thought that the system would be so shameless. This is not money. This is your sincerity. Taylor continued to bluff. In order to give you this opportunity, I have said all kinds of good things. If you don't show some sincerity, I will also be in a difficult position. All right, who told you to make the decision? Beijing's young Master Hua had a crying face and clicked confirm. There was no other way. If he didn't pay, he couldn't accept the quest. If he didn't accept the quest, the system would force him to file it away. Young Master Huan naturally knew what was more important. System notice. You have accepted the quest Destiny Scales. Level S. Quest details. Kill the Lord of Demon Souls. Jamil 0/1. Quest hint. This quest is extremely dangerous. It is recommended to travel in groups. Looking at the changes in the quest window, Beijing's young Master Hua and Eternal Silence bade farewell to Taylor like frosted eggplants and walked out of the church dejectedly. It was a level 100 god tier boss. They didn't need to travel in groups. The key was how to travel in groups. Against such a strong opponent, 8 to 10 party members definitely wouldn't be able to handle it. Even if there were a few hundred people, it would probably be suicide. However, if there were more people, it would be a big problem. As mentioned before, there was an unwritten rule in Rebirth. If a large number of players from a main city appeared in another main city, it would be determined as an invasion. At that time, the invaded main city's players would band together and attack. Even main cities of the same faction were like this, not to mention the two opposing factions, Light and Darkness. Moreover, Holy Light City and Darkness City were absolute enemies. If they brought too few players, they definitely wouldn't be able to complete the quest. If they brought too many players, the result would be obvious. Darkness City had close to 1 million players, and the subordinates of Beijing's young master Hua wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between the enemy's teeth. They might not even be able to enter the door. What was a dead end? This was a dead end. Their heads hurt, their heads hurt. Their heads hurt when they met the shameless system. Eternal Silence, and Eternal Silence's current mood was simply terrible. Hey, two bosses. Just as Eternal Silence and Eternal Silence walked out of the church, they suddenly heard a shout from not far away. Hearing the voice, Eternal Silence and Light of Dawn hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice. They saw a group of people from the Quanzhong sect squatting in a corner and drawing circles in boredom. The one who had called out to them was the Quanzhong sect's boss, Wuji. Why is it you again? Eternal Silence didn't have a good impression of Wuji. If it wasn't for him being afraid of offending Wang Yu, Eternal Silence would have probably exposed this grandson to the public. Eternal Dawn had intended to ignore this matter, but who knew that this disgusting bastard would appear in front of him like a haunting ghost? Eternal Silence was already in a bad mood. When he saw Wuji, his expression suddenly looked like he had eaten 2 caddies of flies. That's right, it's me. Wuji laughed and walked directly in front of Eternal Silence and Eternal Silence. Seeing Wuji walk over, Eternal Silence subconsciously took a step back and said, "Didn't you guys leave? What are you still doing here?" "Waiting for you guys," Wuji said with a smile. "Waiting for us? Why are you waiting for us?" Eternal Silence looked at Wang Yu in a panic and asked in a somewhat panicked manner, "Meow, isn't this matter already over? You guys killed the boss and stole the quest. Isn't this considered playing? Wasn't this too ruthless?" Chapter 1740. F***ck me. Wuji really doesn't want any face at all. Eternal Dawn did not react to Wuji's words, but the people in Xuanzhen started whispering. Damn it, other people might not know what kind of person Wuji was, but the people from the Xuanzhen sect were quite familiar with him. With this guy's temper, if someone looked at him on the street, they might be blackmailed for money, let alone asking him for help. Yet, this guy actually said that he was kind-hearted? Oh, when have they ever been shameless? Chun Xiang, Mingdu, and the other old people in Xuanzhen looked at Baosan. Baosan also shook his head and said, "I don't think so. Awesome." Everyone exclaimed when they heard this. It was not difficult for a person to be shameless, but to persist for more than 20 years, that was commendable perseverance. Although Wuji's nature was bad, he still had his redeeming qualities. "Help me." At this time, Eternal Dawn was slightly surprised when he heard Wuji's words. He raised his eyebrows and asked with a face full of doubt, "What are you up to this time?" After being cheated by Wuji once, Eternal Dawn had learned his lesson. He was naturally on guard against Wuji at all times. Seeing Wuji's despicable appearance, Eternal Dawn could not help but feel a chill in his heart. "I am helping you with all my heart." Wuji curled his lips and said, "I think you are a smart person. I believe you will need our help in this quest." "Quest?" Eternal Dawn looked around vigilantly and said, "What quest? Don't play dumb." Wuji chuckled and said, "Of course it's a salvage quest. You." Eternal Dawn and Hua Xiao's eyes widened when they heard this and pointed at Wuji in unison and asked, "You sent people to follow me?" "Huh." Wuji laughed and said, "How can it be called following in the game? I'm just sharing resources with you guys." "Cut the crap," Eternal Dawn said angrily. "I have nothing to say to people like you. Get lost, or else don't blame me for being rude." With that, Eternal Dawn took out his staff and pointed it at Wuji's nose. "With just you?" Wuji smiled faintly and pushed the staff in front of him to the side and said, "You don't understand our Xuanzhen strength, but you should have seen Old Cow's strength. Do you think you can complete your quest without us?" This. Hearing Wuji's words, Eternal Silent Dawn, who was originally furious, immediately revealed a hesitant expression. Even though Wuji was a hateful person, he was an extremely intelligent person. His words were even more accurate. His words struck Eternal Silence's heart. That's right. Eternal Silence of Dawn was most troubled by the salvage quest that he had just received. After all, Eternal Dawn was the one who screwed up the quest. Even if Hua Xiao didn't say anything, Eternal Dawn still felt very apologetic. Eternal Dawn had seen how difficult this quest was. If he couldn't help Hua Xiao in time, Eternal Dawn would feel guilty for a long time. Favors were much harder to return than money. Whether it was Wang Yu or the other members of Chuanjin, Eternal Dawn never dared to doubt the strength of this group. After all, this group of people could easily deal with the son of the Holy Soul, Louis, so it wouldn't be a problem for them to deal with the Lord of the Demon Soul, Jamil. Wuji's words could be said to have directly grasped Eternal Dawn's weakness. Eternal Silence of Dawn was faced with two choices. First, choose to believe in Wuji. However, considering Wuji's previous actions, this choice was risky. There was even a high chance that he would be sold off by this group of fellas. However, if this group of fellas could really help him, then he would definitely be able to complete this mission. 2. Choose not to believe in Wuji. If he didn't believe in Wuji, he naturally wouldn't have to bear the risk. However, other than the people of Chuanjin, Eternal Dawn really couldn't think of anyone who could help him complete this quest. Eternal Dawn didn't want to be cheated, and he didn't want to fail the quest. Now, these two choices, no matter which one it was, gave Eternal Dawn a headache. For a moment, Eternal Dawn began to hesitate. Seeing that Eternal Dawn began to hesitate, Wuji smiled and said, "If it was any other time, I wouldn't care about your life and death. However, my old cow is an upright person. I don't want to take your money and make things difficult for you, so I'm helping you. If you're not willing, we won't force you." Old cow. When Eternal Dawn heard this, he raised his head and glanced at Wang Yu. He saw that Wang Yu was also looking at him with a calm expression. Wang Yu still had that honest look on his face. Looking at Wang Yu's appearance, Eternal Dawn didn't know why, but he couldn't hate this guy who cheated him. After thinking for a while, Eternal Dawn finally nodded and said, "All right, tell me, how can you help us?" Of course, Eternal Dawn didn't choose to cooperate with Wuji just because he trusted Wang Yu. It was because he really had no other choice if he didn't cooperate with Wuji. Anyway, the final result would be the same. Instead of being helpless, it was better to give it a shot. Moreover, Eternal Dawn and Wang Yu had dealt with each other before. He had a deep impression of Wang Yu's character. Although this time Wang Yu cheated him, how could a two-way quest be considered cheating? If it was anyone else, they would do the same. Therefore, the Eternal Dawn decided to give the Quanjun sect and himself a chance. "Young Master Dawn, you're crazy." Seeing that Eternal Dawn was fooled by Wuji with just a few words, Hua Xiao anxiously said, "This group of bastards, they might want to cheat us again. Isn't it asking a tiger for its skin if we cooperate with them?" "So what?" Eternal Dawn said helplessly, "If we don't cooperate with them, do you think we can complete this quest?" Hearing Eternal Dawn's words, Hua Xiao was speechless. "It's not difficult to help you, but you also have to help yourselves," Wuji replied. "What do you mean?" Eternal Dawn said with a cold face. "Don't beat around the bush. The readers are watching. Who doesn't know?" Wuji laughed and said without changing his expression, "We can help you kill the Demon Soul Lord, but you have to pay." "Oh, how much money this time? Or do you want to pay in advance?" Eternal Dawn asked impatiently. Money is just a worldly possession." Wuji smiled and said, "This time we want people." "People?" Eternal Dawn frowned and asked, "How many?" Eternal Dawn was quite surprised by Wuji's request. Previously, when they killed the son of the Holy Soul, Chuanjin only had a dozen of them to complete the quest. But this time, they wanted to use their own people. Could it be that the Demon Soul Lord was more powerful than the son of the Holy Soul? "How many people do you have?" Wuji asked. 7 or 8,000. Eternal Dawn thought for a moment and said, "Okay, Wuji clenched his fist and said with certainty, I want all of them. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.